I feel like baby boomers, like Jim Cramer was on CNBC saying, he sold his Bitcoin for a house, right? And like baby boomers, I feel like it has to be physical. They got to cash it out. It's like, hey man, now I have wood and some windows, and I got a nice view off this bluff, like whatever. That's what they value, right? Whereas like my generation, we actually do value digital worth, digital value. Like that's important. Failure is sort of this Darwinian level tragedy, and this the default state of every business is dying in obscurity. That's where you start from. Failure is the default. So success is the thing that is rare. So anything that you want in life is this dance between chaos and order, which is like you have to be disciplined in order to achieve the things that you want.
Today I'm sitting with American HODL. HODL has been a very popular public figure on Twitter. He's aped into Bitcoin about 5 or 6 years ago with very little capital at the time, which today has grown his net worth astronomically. HODL has been deplatformed for Twitter too many times that I could even count. And more importantly, HODL has been responsible for helping pull hundreds of people, if not thousands, out of poverty by educating and exposing them to Bitcoin. HODL, welcome to the show.
What's up, buddy? Hey, man, I'm super happy to be here. I love, like, I feel like you're doing really good with this podcast, like just starting off. Like, when did you start it? Like 2 months ago?
Like 2 months ago, yeah. It's only done like
you're fucking crushing.
I think you're the 10th person I interviewed.
This was one of the number one pandemic hobbies. I don't know if you noticed this, but like mics sold out, like Yeti mics sold out on Amazon 6 months. Everybody in the country started a podcast.
Yeah, it's like, that's what you do. Yeah, exactly. I'm home, stuck here. What am I doing, right? Hey, listen, as you know, HODL, I bring people on the show that I consider to be docents. And as you know, I've redefined that term docent as people that are inspiring, influencing, and guiding others. I think you're one of those people. You are definitely a docent. And I'd like to learn who your docents were growing up. So why don't we just dive right in and let's talk about it.
Totally, man.
So where'd you grow up?
I'm excited. So I was born in California, moved to DC from California. From DC, moved to Arkansas. Spent, I would say, like the bulk of my childhood in Arkansas. Then I moved to Las Vegas. Then from Las Vegas, I went to college in Chicago. And then back to Las Vegas because going to private college was super expensive, so like I had my father was a corporate attorney, so we moved around a lot for business, you know what I mean? Like the corporation would need him here or there or whatever. And he ended up being vice president of a media institution that owned a bunch of newspapers across the country. So it was like newspaper business. So I was always around that growing up as a kid. Like I was always in the newsroom and stuff like that. And, very different business back then compared to what it is today. Like it's a husk of itself today. It's nothing like what it was back in the early 90s and things like newspapers used to have like a regional monopoly and like there's a whole dynamic there. But yeah, I moved around a lot as a kid, so really like part of my personality was shaped by that. Was just what you find when you're moving around as a kid is that every new school, in every new town, you get to be a new person. So by the time I finally like got to Las Vegas when I was like 11 years old, I was like, I can just come in and be the cool kid. I can just come in and be popular.
What do they know?
You know what I mean? Yeah. So like this was like 2000, right? So I showed up with like spiky hair. I was wearing like a Blink-182 t-shirt and I had a skateboard. I was just, I just had this like attitude, like, what's up? How's it go? And suddenly I was just the most popular kid in school. I was like, it's like a trick, like that I had learned from moving all these times.
So tell me about your mom. What did your mom do? And are your parents divorced or like anything like that going on in your life when you were younger?
So my mom was a CPA. My mom was actually a botanist,
really?
And then she was a CPA, which is a weird transition. And then she was a homemaker for 30 some odd years, but she also suffers from schizophrenia. So, somewhere around 1990-ish, she started to experience like pretty significant symptoms from that. So that's been like a on and off thing her entire life. And nowadays, my father used to take care of her, and nowadays he's dead. And so I've assumed that role of taking care of her.
When did your father pass away?
He passed away in 2017.
Wow.
I think.
Okay.
End of 17 or early 18.
Was he young? How old was your dad?
He was like 66.
Fairly young.
So he had one of those, it was prostate cancer.
Oh.
So he had one of those like
Yeah.
undiagnosed, or like they didn't catch it in time kind of things. And then by the time they caught it, it was like stage 4. And then it just
Wow.
fucking burned through
Yeah.
him. Watching that experience with my father, I think the thing that was most impactful about it was my father was one of the most stressed out people I ever met in my entire life. Just extremely stressed. Like I said, he was a corporate
Yeah.
attorney, so he was always like carrying the weight of that, and and I noticed that like the stress seemed to exacerbate the cancer.
Wow.
So watching him go through this experience, to me, I just think to myself, if I get cancer, I'm just gonna smoke
Smoke weed
weed
like
and just fucking
crazy.
sit by the beach. You know what I mean? And just hang out. Like I'm just gonna
Yep.
chill. I'm gonna be like, listen, I'm dying. You fuckers deal with this shit. And I'll probably get a few more years out of that. You know what I mean?
Kind of
Because he
relax your
did the
body.
opposite of that. Yeah, he did the opposite of that. And it was like all these
Oh.
treatments and all this kind of stuff.
So his
And
last
it
years were
just
just trying to battle.
I think there's a lot in medicine that we don't understand about the mind-body
Mm-hmm.
connection, you know what I mean? And I really do think the stress exacerbated his cancer to a tremendous degree. And so, like, my advice, if you got cancer, you got a loved one going through it, I give people this advice, just get them some weed
Yeah.
and just tell them to
Kill the
chill.
sugar too. Apparently, it's really bad. I don't know if it's too late by the
Yeah.
time you get it, but they say there's a big connection between sugar and
I tried to get him to do a ketogenic
Yeah.
diet, but he didn't want to do it,
Mhm.
because he was like stress eating and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And so, yeah, after he got diagnosed, it was like stage 4, and it was like 20 months from diagnosis
Wow.
to death. And obviously, that's like a fucking brutal experience when you go through that with a parent. And then, my father was also like the pillar, or like the linchpin that was like
Yeah.
holding up all this stuff with my mother and her mental illness, and all these, like, he was the pillar for everyone in the extended family. So when he died, I had to like assume a lot of these roles,
Yeah.
and that shit was like fucking
But at least he
brutal.
got
At the
to
same
see
time, I was
you.
having
I got a little feedback there. I don't know what that was. Maybe the volume.
oh yeah.
But at least he got to see you. I'm still getting it. It's all good. I was going to say, at least he's gotten to see you purchase your Bitcoin and see the growth, right? Because you started getting in 14 and 15. So I know you've said this to me on Clubhouse a few times. Did he think it was real money?
No, what's interesting is so I called him in 17, which was when we were dealing with his cancer stuff also. And I was like, hey man, this is, you're not going to believe this. Like, this is crazy, but I'm a multimillionaire right now,
So cool.
And he was like, that from what? And I was like, Bitcoin. He was like, yeah, that doesn't count. Like, that's not real. And I was like, it does count. It's liquid. I could put it into cash right now if I wanted to. And he was like, why don't you then? I was like,
Taxes?
because it's going to go up more. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why would I cash out? Why would I sell the thing that's making me rich? Me and him had very different mindsets. He was very risk intolerant, right? Like, and I think a lot of people that go that corporate attorney route, or they become a doctor or CPA, whatever, like, they have that mindset where they don't want to take risk. They want respectability. They want to do things the right
Status.
way, like, I'm just going to put away my 15% every year in my 401k, and I'm going to buy broad market index funds, and
SPY.
he viewed me as basically, yeah, he viewed me as basically like his retarded son who, was like, and I was just like, all right, man,
It
I
sucks
actually
that he
do
didn't
know
get to
what
see
I'm
it now.
doing.
Because I mean, now you've hit escape velocity, bro. I mean, you're not going back.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I asked myself that question, like how he would feel if he was still alive, and talk with us about my wife, and I'm like, I just still think he would think it wasn't real money,
But you bought your house. I mean, like you guys have a nice lifestyle. You're not working. Like, obviously, it's real.
I feel like baby boomers, like Jim Cramer was on
Oh, my
CNBC
God.
saying, he sold his Bitcoin for a house, right? And like baby boomers, I feel like it has to be
Physical.
They got to cash it out. It's like, hey man, now I have wood and some windows, and I got a nice view off this bluff, like whatever. That's what they value, right? Whereas like my generation, we actually do value digital worth, digital value. Like, that's important to me. I think if you're a millennial or below, it's a very different playbook for getting wealthy than it was for baby boomers, and even to a large degree Gen X. Although you were early, you're Gen X, right? Like,
Yeah, 79.
You're sort of cusp. Yeah,
I'm almost in the
so,
millennial, but no. Yeah.
You were early on the digital wave,
Yeah.
but I think that for millennial and below, it's going to be like a significant way to get wealthy in our generation is going to be either creating or acquiring digital value or trading digital value.
Yep.
Those are really like the three things that you're
Well, then
gonna
you
do
must
if
totally believe in NFTs.
I do not.
It's a digital value.
I do like the idea of NFTs. I'll say that, but
It's not quite
I
there,
just don't
especially on
think the
top of
technology-
Ethereum and stuff, right?
Yeah, I don't think the technology is there
Yeah.
today. I don't think the implementation is there. Like, there are just I haven't seen it yet. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there is something real there.
But
And I just
something
don't
that's evolving, and
understand
it's just like the internet back in '99 and 2000.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't there, but I knew that there was a there we were evolving towards, and I still don't even know if we're fully there, right? But there's definitely something that's obviously a there. And in 2000, when it crashed, nobody believed anything, you know. So
Yeah. I think the difference, like, with Bitcoin was, like, from the very first day Bitcoin was launched,
Yeah.
it was this massive technological breakthrough and innovation, solved all these problems, these old computer science problems like the Byzantine generals problem, et cetera. And then it really took 10 years of, like, human understanding for us to come to grips with it, right? Whereas I think if you look at something like the NFT market or something, it's like, there's this idea that what I said, like creating and acquiring and trading digital value is going to be a big deal over the next 100 years, but there isn't the implementation that lasts 100 years. You know what I mean? Whereas Bitcoin is the implementation that will last 100, maybe even 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And
And
so
for people that don't understand,
I have a very,
but people don't understand, Bitcoin's
Yeah.
not the first iteration of digital money, right? So if you want to just touch on that
Right.
very briefly for the audience that doesn't know that, because there are
yeah.
people
So
that don't.
I mean, Bitcoin is sort of built on the back of, maybe 30 or 40 years of cryptographic research, and there have been other attempts at digital money before Bitcoin. There was Liberty Reserve, which was entirely centralized. Wei Dai had a proposal called B Money. There was Adam Back's Hash Cash. So there were just many. There was like Chaumian eCash implementations. There were many attempts at digital money beforehand, and most of them failed because of centralization, right? Like Liberty Reserve, that was the case. I mean, if the government can come in and just shut it down, well, the government doesn't want competition for monies. So if there's a centralized server somewhere, they're going to come in and just shut it down. And like the reason I was skeptical about Bitcoin in the early days was because, hubris. I just assumed back in 2011 when somebody first told me about it, that there was some centralized server somewhere, and that some group of, anarchist or activist or whomever was playing whack-a-mole with the government, sort of like the Pirate Bay or something like that, right?
BitTorrent.
But I didn't even look into it. I never read the white paper. I didn't realize it was decentralized. I just assumed. You know what I mean? And that mistake cost me a lot. That hubris
You'd be a billionaire
cost me
today.
a lot of money.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because I knew about Bitcoin when it was $7, and I didn't start buying until the low 200s, right? Which like still seems very cheap from where we're sitting at, like right around 50K right now, which is considered a dip, right? But like if you've been here as long as I have,
Well, we were texting last night. I
$200.
meet you and CJ last night, and I think John, and I was saying to CJ, like you're thinking about buying more, you should just dump it into GBTC, and because it's trading at a discount to the NAV, as well as it being at a discount to what the all-time high was, and it's going to go back to the all-time high. He believes it. He's a bull, right? So he believes that. If that's the case, you're down 40% plus right now from that price in GBTC, right?
I think there are a lot of people who the GBTC trade. Real Bitcoiners don't like it because it's not real Bitcoin, right? And they're right. It
in
is
your
just
retirement,
an IOU
though, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I think, the way in which to be able to hold precious metals or Bitcoin or non-traditional assets in your retirement account is you have to do what's called a self-directed IRA or self-directed Roth IRA, right? That takes time to set up. There's, reporting requirements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like ultimately you should do that. But I think if you have a retirement account that's just sitting there right now, go ahead and ape in on GBTC.
And you're getting it at a discount to the current price. It's
exposure.
amazing what's happening right now.
Yeah, get the price exposure, sell it later, and then transition that into, raw Bitcoin. Because the interesting thing will be in the future, you're going to want to have access to the private keys instead of just having an IOU, like through a custodian, because there will be, avenues and optionality on those private keys so that you can, participate in something like Lightning pools and earn yield on the Lightning network and all sorts of cool, innovative stuff that's going to happen. But if you don't have your keys, you really can't participate in that kind of technological advancement that's going to occur over the next 10, 20 years, you know?
Let's go back. Did you have siblings growing up?
Yeah.
You have siblings?
No, so I was an only
Oh, you're
child.
like me. I mean, I had a sibling. He passed away when I was 5, and then I have 3 half brothers. But growing up, I was the only child in the house. So how do you think that affected you
Oh, I
in
didn't
any
know
way?
that.
Yeah, in my house growing up, I was the only child. Yeah.
So when was it a brother?
I had a brother
passed
pass away when I was 5. He was a baby, SIDS. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was a traumatic event in the house. I mean, and for my parents. I mean, as a kid, you're kind of resilient. You know, I was upset about it. I'm not saying I wasn't, but you forget very quickly and you keep moving and you remember at times. I was 5 when it happened.
Oh, so was he a twin?
Oh no, it was SIDS. So he died as a baby. He was 6 months old.
Oh, he was a baby. Oh, you were 5. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I heard it as
no. I was 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this show's not about me. So that's for another day. But no, for real, like, how did that affect you growing up? Do you think that had any impact on the way you think, the way you operate, your motivations in any way, being the only child?
Yeah. You know, because I was an only child, I was, I had a bad home. I didn't like being at home, right? And this was the 90s. People would just be like, they'd kick you out and they'd just be like, you know, go play in the street, kid, or whatever. So
your
and I was living in
seatbelt is
Arkansas.
this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so everybody had 6 or 7 person families, you know, there was a lot of that going on. And so I would just slide into other people in the neighborhood. I would just slide into their family. And I'd just be the 7th kid at dinner. You know what I mean? And so being the 7th kid at dinner, I learned to be very polite, know my place, work, you know, in the group, like never overstay my welcome, social skills. So like sometimes when I meet people, they say, well, you don't act like an only child. And it's like, because I was literally always at other people's homes because I hated being at my own house. And I would just slide into other people's family. And I would always you'd always get the call home, you know, like, oh, HODL he was so well behaved over here. And it's like, yeah, because I want to be fucking invited back because I don't like my own house.
What didn't you like about the house though? Well, was the parents dynamic?
Yeah, it was just a really depressing household. Like, you know, just my mother was always going through all sorts of insane stuff. And my father was a workaholic who was never there. And when he was there, he was just using scotch to cope with my mother's extreme mental illness. So it was a lot of just like zoned out scotch drinking while watching golf on television or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and just me being like, God, this sucks. I want to get out of here. You know? So like, really, I just was never there.
And as a parent, I'm guessing that shaped you in some way of how you want to raise your kids and with how you are with your family.
Oh, totally, man. Yeah. I think when you have a fucked up childhood, like I did, and it sounds like you did, you know, too, to a large degree, you just, that becomes your.
I want to be clear. I don't think I had a fucked up childhood. My parents were good people, but it wasn't.
I'm sorry, Jay's parents.
No, it wasn't an easy. It wasn't the most difficult, right? It was lower middle class. Like we were middle class. I wouldn't say lower middle class, but we were a middle class family, you know. So, but my dad was a carpenter, so it's not like we were rich, you know. And my mom, she cleaned houses and stuff. So but you know, I just want to set the record. You know, my parents watching this are like, what the fuck is he talking about? You know.
I think it really does. It creates this modus operandi for your life, which is just essentially like, I need to fix this shit. You know what I mean? Like when
I think everybody wants to do that though, right? Like you wanted to just, and I think your parents want that for you too. Everybody wants their kids to do better than they are.
I think so too. Here's where I think people get it wrong, in my opinion, is that you can't just tell your kids things and not model it for them. So really, in order to fix your children, you have to fix yourself. You know, like to a large degree, I had to go to therapy because my father never went to therapy. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing. So like you got to do the work up front so that your children don't have to do it, because whatever you tell your kids, they're just like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like, what's this guy talking about? Right. Whatever you model for them in your household, though, you model a loving relationship, you model being disciplined, being, you know, healthy, all that kind of stuff is going to spill over into their lives, because they're going to become an adult, just go on autopilot and just do all the things that you did essentially. So,
and that's the hard part if your parents were doing things that you don't want to do, because you have to break that mold, right? So, and everybody, and nobody's perfect. Like you probably have idiosyncratic weird shit that your kids are going to grow up going like, God, I don't want to be anything like that. You know,
it's the shit you don't realize about yourself, you know, that you can't fix, right? So like being in denial is always like a problem, right? But yeah, I think a lot of people do. Everybody wants the best for their children, right? But not everybody wants the best for themselves.
Weird, right?
And that's the thing. Yeah, and if you don't want the best for yourself, you're modeling to your child that they shouldn't want the best
Yeah.
for themselves either. And then you're going to end up fucking.
I'll give you an example about people don't want the best for themselves, and I hope he watches this. Mo LeBeau, you know, my buddy, right? He's like you. He's got a pseudonym, right? So Mo LeBeau, I'm on the phone with him this morning, pre-market open, and I'm like, listen, bro. He called me up this morning because his price drops. He's freaking the fuck out. I'm like, dude, relax. Did anything fundamentally change about Bitcoin or the economy or anything over the last 24 hours? Nothing's changed. This is just supply versus demand. Just relax, dude, you know? And there's some sentiment about taxes and this and that with the, you know, the capital gains tax thing they're saying they're going to go to ordinary income levels. I go, so people are risk off a little bit, but that'll change, right? But regardless if it does or doesn't in the shorter term, you know, over the long term that Bitcoin's going to go rising up. I go, what you should do is in your retirement account, you should buy GBTC because you're getting the discount from the high and you're getting the discount from the NAV. And he's like, I'm tapped out in my retirement. So I'm like, oh shit, you're all in on GBTC in your retirement. That's pretty good. He goes, no. I got a bunch of ETI, but I don't want to touch it. I go, fuck, man. Dump that shit. Like you're going to get a 10% gain per year on average in the S&P, right? You're going to get a 10% per week. Not even like it's like 200% per year. And even if it's not 200% next year, over the 5-year horizon, think about what you're leaving on the table. And it's like, he doesn't want the best for himself, right? That's to your point. People are getting in their own way constantly. And you try to help them, but like sometimes they're not helpable, you know?
Yeah. I got a lot of buddies like Mo in my life. A lot of. But at least Mo has actually listened to you.
He has. No, he's in a big way too, right? So, I mean, I give him credit. And it's mostly, I said, but the thing about the retirement account, I feel like that should be all like you are, me. It's just totally GBTC in those retirement accounts. Like, why wouldn't you be? You're not touching that shit for 30 years anyway. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I put my entire retirement account into GBTC back in 2015. Yeah. And so now it's a ridiculous amount of money for somebody in my age bracket. Like you're not supposed to have that much in a Roth. You know what I mean? Like it's not supposed to work out.
No.
But if you just do crazy stuff in your Roth, like buy GBTC back in 2015.
Honestly, and not to go over to the numbers, but like your retirement account is going to be what most people won't even get from exits of tech companies in the next 20 years. It's insane, man. It's insane, you know?
Yeah. And it's tax free. That's the best.
That's what's amazing about it, and that's why I encourage everybody to do that. Yeah. So, who are your heroes growing up? Who did you look up to? Like athletes, family, actors, singers, business people. Like who were you idolizing?
Yeah. Tiger Woods, of course. Michael Jordan for sure, as ever. You know, anybody who was my, you know, I was like, what was I? I was 8 when the '97 Bulls was happening. You know, so like just watching MJ on TV as just a little boy was just like pure magic. You know, in fact, I can't even watch basketball really anymore. It's not this basketball in the '90s was like the peak of professional sports almost. You know, it was just amazing. Trying to think like growing up, who else did I?
What about comedians? Because I know you're a funny guy. Were you into comedy or?
Yeah, definitely. I love comedy. Dave Chappelle, of course. Like when I was in high school, the Chappelle Show was a thing, and just all of Chappelle's stuff was amazing. Bill Burr is a favorite comedian. Tom Segura. Who else, man? Joe Rogan.
I was just thinking Joe Rogan when you said Tom Segura. Yeah.
I've been listening to Joe Rogan's podcast since like 2010. Mm-hmm. You know, that's been a big influence I think on me. Like in a lot of ways, like Rogan was the male Oprah for my generation. You know what I mean? It really did get you into like living your best life because he was just like talking about like dude stuff. Like I'm gonna go hunt like fucking elks and you know I'm gonna smoke weed. And I'm gonna fucking drink whiskey. And I was like, yes, that's what I want to do too. You know, like.
He's a cool guy. He's a realist, and he should be. Is he a Bitcoin guy? I don't know if I've heard him say he's a libertarian. It seems like he fits right up his alley. I don't know if he is though.
I don't think he's in on Bitcoin really. I don't think he cares about money.
Yeah.
You know, he's one of these guys who's like, I just don't really care about money, which is easy to do when you got $100 million bucks.
Doesn't matter
anymore.
I mean?
It's easy to not care. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Plus.
And then you meet Jason Williams and you're like, whoa, he still cares.
He's got the earning potential to go out and make $30 million a year whenever he wants.
That's
right? Which is like, that's a crazy, because he's not only does he make 30 million off the podcast per year, 33 million. He's got the UFC. He's got stand-up comedy. He probably makes 10 mil off UFC, 10 mil off stand-up comedy per year. And then So what is that? He's making 50 million bucks a year easy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah, guys like that.
What do I need Bitcoin
they
for?
Kind of sometimes. Yeah, exactly. Right. Whereas, guys who are still coming up in the world are really into Bitcoin more so.
Were you an athlete growing up? Did you play sports?
I was, yeah.
Which
So
play?
like, let's see, baseball, big into. I was Little League champion. Used to bat, clean up, and play center. Soccer, I used to be on a club team. Let's see what else. Track and field, I used to I was one of the top in the state for the long jump.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Trying to think. Basketball sucked.
Really?
Terrible.
You're tall too. You're like 6'3", right?
Yeah, I'm 6'3", and so I used to get approached all the time by coaches and shit. Like, you should play basketball. I'm like, I suck. I just can't shoot for whatever. You know what I mean? Like, played wide receiver and cornerback for a few years, but scrubbed out early in high school. And by high school, I had pretty much scrubbed out of almost everything because I just discovered I loved partying and girls. Right. So by high school, it was pretty much.
I feel like football
on
and like sports are synonymous with getting girls, though. Like, why not continue on that pursuit? And then you're the cool jock that everybody wants,
I went to a really big high school. It was 4,000-ish kids, right? And so it was kind of subdivided into like people who partied were cool and people who didn't party were losers. And of the people who partied, you had everybody there. So like all my friends were on the football team and all my friends were like, but it was also skateboard kids and druggy kids, all that stuff, right? Because it was just the kids who partied. So it was just that kind of thing. So I hung out with all the dudes on the football team and enjoyed all of the spoils of their hard work. You know what I mean?
Did you have any like trauma growing up? Like, were you bullied as a kid or anything like that? Was there any issues growing up? Death in the family at an early age, like I had, anything like that?
No, really the trauma was just like
Mom.
this persistent, like dealing with my mentally ill mother.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That was like my big trauma. Just like I wasn't beat or anything like that. It was just like, it was just like when you're a very young kid, and you find out that, your mother, who you're supposed to rely on, and I think a lot of people have this story, your mother who you're supposed to rely on or your father who you're supposed to rely on is essentially an unreliable narrator in your life, and that every time you listen to them, you end up getting hurt badly. And so it immediately puts this distrust in you of not only your parents, but all authority figures. And so I kind of just went through my entire life with that from the time I was a very small kid, like 3 or 4 years old, that I can't trust these people. And so I'm just going to rely on myself. And anytime an adult is just going womp, 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 I'm just going to ignore it. You know what I mean? And so that was like it was like a persistent, like low level trauma that still goes on to this day, honestly, because I still have to take care of my mother, which is always very emotionally arresting whenever I have to go deal with things in that arena or have those visits, It just, it's like an emotional neglect more than like just being beaten or something, you know what I mean?
Totally.
In fact,
and it's it's got to be a weird dynamic too, because you know that it's not intentional, it's a disability. So that's the part that's probably troubling, I guess. You can't be mad at her, right? I think you're not mad at her. It is what it is.
Yeah, it was not intentional for her, but it still is just, if you've ever had to deal with 30 plus years of dealing with somebody with a chronic illness, right? It's just extremely debilitating for everyone around them. Like there's just a lot of burnout that comes with it, where it's just like, oh fuck, this again. You know what I mean? And like she would always do stuff like when I was a kid, like traumatic events would be like she would like destroy the house. That used to happen a lot. So you'd come home and you'd think the house was burglarized, but really it was just my mother had fucked everything up and broken all of my shit. And then, I've seen her like wrestle with cops in the middle of the street, like punch cops, like all sorts of crazy shit. You know what I mean? So all right. Now that I'm thinking about it, there actually was like
there's a little trauma, but that shapes. I mean, like the book Relentless, right? Like they talks about some of this stuff. It kind of shapes into the behaviors that you have as you get older and you're pursuing your goals, right? So, do you feel that there's a connection to that?
It was always just kind of like, I totally, because there was just all these authority figures in my life were always just telling me like I couldn't do something, or that's not allowed, or you can't, or this or that. And so I've just always been the kind of person my entire life who's like, yeah, okay, you tell me I can't cross this line, I'm gonna step way the fuck over that line. And, sometimes that has been very harmful for me because sometimes the line is there for good reason. But I think when you become a habitual line stepper, right, you realize that a lot of times the line is bullshit and you don't have to pay attention to it,
for the most
part.
Yeah.
You get to know for yourself, like, when is it going to be harmful for you to step over that line? Like, maybe I won't go get a drug addiction just to prove somebody wrong. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like something like that. Like, I'm not going to go get addicted to heroin to prove
I'm not going to rob this bank just to prove them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But there are a lot of these lines in society, like, you can't do that, especially financially. It's like people don't think about risk. They don't have a proper equilibrium for risk reward, right? And so they think like you should just basically take zero risk ever, and that you'll be totally safe. And it's not true, right? Because there's always risk present in everything. And really, risk is this is a VC. Risk is about sizing, right? So it's about how much you actually putting in the position, and then what's the asymmetric upside on that position, right? So if you're putting in, Gary Tan was telling a story the other day about he put $300K into Coinbase, and he got a $2.4 billion return off of that, right? So, to Gary Tan, was $300K going to make or break his life? Probably not. But 2.4 billion is definitely going to have an effect on his life, right? So it's
he also said something that I thought was really interesting, because you're a hodler, right? And he said that private equity is great for one reason: you're stuck in the asset; it forces you to hodl it. And I thought that was a really interesting point, because if he had bought Bitcoin, he probably would have sold multiple times on the way up and never gotten to $2.4 billion.
Yeah, you really have to find the thing that motivates you in order to tie yourself to the masthead, so to speak. Like, because it's very difficult. Bitcoin is high, especially Bitcoin. Bitcoin is highly liquid. I can sell it at any time, right? It dumped from 64K to 48K. Mm-hmm. I could have gotten panicky and been like, I want to hold on to my wealth, and dumped it all. And many people did. In the
that's
market,
why it's going down, right?
Just today. Yeah, especially if they are new entrants, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
people, this is another thing that people don't realize, right? People were buying at 17, at 20, at 25, at 30, 40, 50, 60, right? And then the people are buying at 20s and 30s. When they see it go to 60 and pull back to 50, they start selling. So you have selling pressure that comes down. But at some point, people like you and me and Jason and others will say, thank you very much for the discount. I'm buying some more. And then it just reverses course again.
A lot of people get it wrong too. They think that hodling is a passive thing. You buy your Bitcoin and you hold it and you just don't do anything. But really, you have to wake up every day and make a decision. Are you going to continue hodling? Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like at the end, and everything that's worth having in life is like this, right? Like, I'm going to be wealthy. So I am going to sit here and not sell my Bitcoin for the next 5,000 days. And at the end of 5,000, so every day for 5,000 days, I'm going to wake up and make a decision not to sell. At the end of 5,000 days, I will be much wealthier than I am today. Or I'm going to wake up every day for the next 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 days, and I'm going to not cheat on my wife. And so I'm going to have a good marriage at the end of, my life, right?
Unless you're Lamar.
He
thinks that everybody cheats.
Lamar is our friend on Clubhouse who thinks everybody's a cheater. But, or it's like, I'm going to put healthy food in my body, and I'm going to exercise every day for the next 5,000 days. And at the end of it, I'm going to have a healthy body, right? Like, so anything that you want in life is this sort of this dance between chaos and order, which is like, you have to be disciplined in order to achieve the things that you want. And it is an active approach. It's sort of a meditative approach. It's an active meditation, really.
You're a pretty intelligent guy. I only know that not because of the things you tweet, because we have context with deep conversations. I've spent hundreds of hours with you in rooms, and we talked on stage on Clubhouse. You're a pretty intelligent guy. What kind of grades did you get in school? What was your SAT scores?
Oh, man. I think I told you it was just terrible. I figured out that if I got early, like in elementary school, I figured out if I got D's that they would just pass me to the next thing. So I just didn't give a shit, and I just got D's. I would just do the bare. Like, I graduated high school with a 1.6 GPA, and I tell that to people, and they're like, you actually have to work at that to get a 1.6. And yeah, I did work at it. Awesome. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm proud of that.
I was always the kid. I would just be. They'd give me a piece of homework, and immediately in my head, I'd just be like, I'm not doing that. And then, like,
I'll do my homework at homeroom.
I would procrastinate. Yeah, exactly. Or in the car on the way to school, I'd be like scribbling stuff down. You know what I mean? Or I'd pretend to have turned it in. I turned it in. Like, I don't know. So I was always just trying to like break the system. I was basically like, I viewed school like a prison, and I was like a prisoner watching the guards, trying to figure out where the weaknesses were. You know what I mean? That's how I went through school.
It reminds me of like,
And
it's
so,
like business, right? Like school, I treated it
yeah,
like I did with business. It's a game. I'm going to figure out the rules of the game, the rules of engagement, and I'm going to play within the rules, and I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to win. But I never viewed it, I'm like you, I never viewed it as I need to have the absolute highest grades and be the most competitive academically. I just figure like no one's ever going to know that when I'm 40, 50, 60 years old, what my grades were. Who gives a shit? I just got to get out of this thing. And then I get to go do what I want in life, you know? That's how
it
I
was interesting because all of the energy that I spent routing around doing the work, like I must have expended 20x the amount of energy it took to get around a homework assignment rather than just do the homework assignment. You know what I mean? So really, I was, there's like hypertrophy there. I'm actually growing these muscles. I'm getting these reps of like, how do I route around systems? How do I win the game on my own terms? Et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like this is why that expression, the A students work for the C students is because the C students have figured out a way to just coast through life. And these are the guys who end up being, the hedge fund managers or the CEOs or whoever, right? Whereas the A students end up working for the C students because they end up being a vice president or something, because that's like respectable and I did things correctly and, all this kind of stuff. Whereas to get really outsized results, you kind of have to be a little crazy, in one way, shape, or form. Like you're not walking the same path as everyone else, because if you do the same things that everyone else does, you're going to get the same results that everyone else gets, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was me from a really early age.
Where did you end up going to college? What did you say? You say that earlier?
So I went to college at Columbia College in Chicago, which was the same college, notably, that Kanye West dropped out of, right? It was big. It's a big art school in downtown Chicago, and I was there. I was doing a lot of partying. I was living in downtown Chicago in this big dorm. It took up a whole city block, and there was like the Roosevelt, DePaul, and Columbia. They all had students in this dorm, and so there was just so many chicks in the dorm, bro. So like, you know what I mean? It was just, and there'd be like a party on this floor, and then on this floor. It was like living in a skyscraper full of 20-year-olds, and it was the best, right? But my private education at that school was like $50K. Wow. To go there per year. Yeah, so it was great, like when you factor living expenses and everything. And when I was 18, my father had put me in charge of my own retirement account.
That's pretty cool.
And so I had the ability to make a financial decision about, do I want to continue to go to the school? And at 18, I realized, you know what? I went here for a year. I spent $50,000 to go here. I didn't accomplish much of anything. And I'm just wasting money, and I'm being a real fuck up. And so I went back to University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which is like dirt cheap. And I ended up, spending $3,000 a semester instead of 15 grand a semester. And then I day traded with the rest of the account.
Did you really?
And this was
during,
I did, yeah. And so this was during 08, this was 08, 09. So like, I actually made this incredibly lucky, fortuitous move. That was when my father gave me the account, it only had $16,000 in it, right? So it wasn't like a crazy account. I was still going to have to find a way to pay my way through college on my own. But I did this thing where I was like, I don't want to have his stock picks. I want to be my own man. So I sold everything to cash literally 6 months before the collapse happened.
Wow.
So I had the 16K sitting in cash when everything happened. And I bought Apple stock at like 80. Just crazy shit, right? And so I ended up like turning that 16 into like $150,000.
Wow.
And I thought I was, and I'm like 19. I think I'm the smartest fucking kid in the world.
Is that the capital that you used eventually to buy Bitcoin too?
Yeah, some of it, yeah. Yeah, I still had a little left over. Well, here's the story though. So I started day trading with it because I found out that, you can come in size on every position. And you're going to have better returns, but you're also going to have worse losses, right? So like I was doing really well. I was making like $800 a day trading, which at the time was like a sick amount of money to me. Like I was like, I'm rich, blah, blah, blah. And then I got locked in a bad trade. I remember it was this biopharmaceutical company that had like some special mice, and these mice were supposed to do whatever. It was so stupid.
A shit coin.
The stock was called LXRX. Yeah, it was a biopharma shitcoin, penny stock, basically. Yeah. And I got locked in on that, ended up riding it all the way down, lost like $80,000. You know what I mean? Just brutal, just devastation, just totally wrecked. and that taught me a lot of lessons. And this was pre-Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So this would have been like 2011 or 12 that I was learning these lessons. And so when I got into Bitcoin, I didn't need to touch the shitcoin, the stove, to know that it was hot. I knew that it was hot. I knew you would get fucked.
Yeah,
you know, like,
you've experienced this already.
You can't control your own greed. Your own greed goes so far out of whack. You start making money like that, you think you're the smartest person that ever lived, and then you ride it all the way back down to zero. You know, because you have convinced yourself, like, I'm so smart, I could never possibly lose. And then you lose a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Mo LeBeau's watching this going, this might be Bitcoin. As today, right? As it's dropping. So funny. What was your major in college?
Film. So I was a film major in college.
And then after school, you started your own production company, or did you have a job first?
So yeah, it's funny. I going to school for film or any art really is forced entrepreneurship, because you get out and quickly discover nobody's willing to pay you to be a filmmaker, right? Like there are no jobs. I remember I took a job, and the guy offered me $28,000 a year to do, like, I was going to be a cameraman and an editor and a producer and do their web stuff. And I was like, bro,
for 28 grand.
This is so much work for so little money. So at that point, I just was like, I'm just going to go work for myself. I started my company with a friend from film school, and we just started figuring it out on the fly, made a lot of mistakes, obviously, but then discovered, there's this alchemy to being an entrepreneur where you can go into a room and, you can have a number in your head of what it costs to do the project. Let's say, like, it's going to cost me $5,000 to do the project. And you can tell the other person sitting across the table can go, how much is this project going to cost? And this is a corporation you're talking to, or whomever. And you size them up and you go, $50,000. And they go, okay. And you're like, wait, what? You just say yes to that? There's like this immediate alchemy, right? And so you get to now take home $45,000 because you're running your business at a 90% margin, right? And I'm from film school. I still had a scrappy mindset and all that. So, I would just hire students. I would beg, borrow, and steal equipment. I'd just find every sort of way possible to not spend money and get as much money coming in as humanly possible. And I basically learned entrepreneurship on the fly that way. And we grew that business up and ended up doing pretty well. It was making $1 million a year at the time I left it. And the problem was I had built it into this thing that was sort of golden handcuffs for myself, because we had one large major client who was paying us ridiculous sums to do all of the work for them. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm just the production department for this
outsourced
company. Yeah, and I'm working for them, right? And I was making really good money, and it was this situation where it was the money was so good that I couldn't quit, but it also wasn't good enough. Yeah. So you end up just feeling stuck, and that's the golden handcuffs thing. Yeah. So I had to pull the ripcord on that when the Bitcoin price started going up. Bitcoin sort of freed me from that position.
What did you have in terms of like a net worth when you decided to quit? Like a seven-figure at that point? You're like, I'm good. Once you got to the seven-figure number?
I think I had, let's see, I quit my job. I won't say when, just for...
Don't dox it that way. I'm just trying to understand, like, what psychologically, for those that are thinking, I might want to quit, but, I have a nice number. Like, what did you do? And not that they should do what you did, but you know what I mean?
I think I had $5 million at that point.
All right.
Which was like, I was like early 30s. To me, that seemed like a lot of money at the time. And I had a future expectation that the Bitcoin price was going to rip. I think I quit when the Bitcoin price was like $8,000, right? Yeah. So I knew that it was going to go crazy this year in 2021.
You're like, I don't need to deal with the bullshit anymore. And you had a concentration risk with that one customer. It's like, I don't want to deal with this anymore,
And it was about the kids too. Like I really could have stayed there and continued stacking Bitcoin with the money I was making at that job, and I would have done better financially. But like being there for the kids was more.
Bro,
important
I gotta tell
because
you,
I had the optionality.
That's where you, me, and John F. Right, Falco, we all kind of connect on this because my kids are older now. I have a 9-year-old, but when I decided I wanted to sell the company, you get these little kids and you have this wealth and you're like, I don't need to do this anymore. I want to be around the kids. Like my wife's home with the kids all the time and I'm like at the office, like, fuck, like I could be not at the office if I just get out of the business. And for me, it was different. I was able to sell the company. You had something else, liquidity, well, not liquidity, but you had amassed this net worth from Bitcoin. And John had his own business, which he has not quite sold yet. but was like, I could distance myself from the business. It was a similar kind of thing, right? So we all have that. I think those kids give you a different perspective on life and like, where should I be spending my time? Because that's the asset that's most valuable. Can't get it back, man.
Totally, man. And, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, are you going to remember, or are you going to really even care if you have, X number of extra $1 million? No. I mean, you missed out on that time with your children that you could never get back. And, they're only little for so long, and it's like such a special moment. Yeah. And then they grow up and then they don't want anything to do with you and they don't call you, So you got to take advantage while they're young. And you got to, like, to me, that trade-off was very well worth it. I didn't even have to think about it.
Yeah, totally.
I know some people, I think some people have this idea that they want to give their kids, the things they never had, the life they never had, right? And so they end up working hard at work and not actually spending time with their family. And then they're like, but remember, we went on this amazing vacation to wherever, and we spent $20,000. Kids don't care. They don't know how much you spent. They just want. Dude, my daughter likes to go to the park we call the swing park, and we just go to the park with the swings. That's it. That's all she likes. It's 5 minutes from my house. We go to the park with the swings. That makes her day. We go to Starbucks on the way home. I get her a cake pop. Her little eyes light up. Like, the best things in life are super cheap,
Dude, all the shit
really
we buy. I don't know if did I ever show you the photo in our big foyer area? We had like all these boxes that were connected. It was like a fort this past winter. Did I show you that?
Yeah.
It was insane. Like, I would crawl in there with them. They loved the boxes. I connected all these. We had all these brand new we have like a big island, so we bought all these chairs, and they're big boxes. They're like this tall. They're probably like 3x3, and I made a whole maze. Like, you go through them, and I had like doorways, and they like that more than all the toys I got for Christmas. We did this every day.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I need to do that. I need to get some boxes and some
boxes.
duct tape.
They actually have a company, because when I did that, one of my friends saw it on like Instagram or something, and he sent me a text message. He goes, "You could buy boxes and make like mazes like you did." I was like, "Of course there is." It's so funny.
See, and cardboard and duct tape.
That's what it was.
That's what your kids, they can fill that space with their imagination. That becomes a spaceship, or it becomes a this or that or whatever.
We had flashlights in there, and like blankets and pillows.
Being neglected in childhood, the thing it taught me was just that I'm never going to neglect my own children.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that, like anything they want, I will drop everything. I will cancel meetings. I will cancel whatever if my children need me there. Or if, my daughter walked in right now, I would give her attention and, ignore you for a second. Yeah. I mean, that's just how it is. Cool. Like that's the way it should be.
Yeah, for sure. So comedy, I said, I think you're a pretty funny guy. And did you have any formal comedic training or anything like that? Did you go into like classes, or, because I feel like you're a pretty funny dude, and I feel like you've done stand up or something. Have you ever done that?
No, I've never done stand up. I used to, I just always been this guy, growing up. Like, I just was always the person who was trying to make people laugh, because comedy is a sort of a defense mechanism, and it can really be helpful for you, like diffusing situations, ingratiating yourself with other people, all sorts of benefits. So when I was little, that's how I used it. And then when I got a little older, like I did do some improv and stuff like that. Okay. And I had a lot of friends that were in the comedy community. And then I ended up, I was in film production too. So I ended up producing a lot of comedy. Like I ran some big comedy YouTube pages and things like that. And so just doing skits and, comedy podcasts and all that kind of stuff, just always trying to find what was funny. And like, I'm still always looking for that when I go into a room or a meeting or whatever, like, what's the funny thing I could say right now? Partially just because I
honestly, bro, like we get on Clubhouse and like the Bitcoin, and we'll get into Bitcoin maximalism in a few minutes, but in the Bitcoin maximalists, like they have a tendency to be like harsh, right? Have fun, stay poor, fuck you, and then kick the guy off the stage. And it's like, but you have a different tone where you can be like that, and then you just a slight nuance of humor to it where people are like, oh, I got you, bro. Whereas like, say Bitcoin Tina, I get DMs, they're like, that guy's mean. It's like, you don't have to be so mean. You can put a little edge to it, but then you can just back off a little and then people get the point, right? You seem to get that. You have the self-awareness, it seems, to do that. And I didn't know if it was because of like how you grew up or you were trained in comedy. I don't know.
Yeah. I think largely it was just, it was kind of that thing of being the seventh kid at the house with six kids. Like, if I wasn't funny and if I wasn't polite and if I wasn't a good house guest, I was not going to be invited back. And I fucking desperately needed to be invited back so that I could not be at my own house. You know what I mean? So that was very important to me. It was like, it had to land. It had the jokes had to land, like I had to be good. I think it's helpful when you're talking to people to come with
Mm-hmm.
humor and with love. And I do think like we can get into Bitcoin maximalism now. It
Sure.
is like a tough love,
Yep.
because like for instance, I was thinking about this the other day. The have fun staying poor meme, that didn't start until year 11
Okay.
of Bitcoin, right? I mean, and I've been in the community for a long time. In 2014 and 15 when I first entered, it was a very different tone and tenor, and we would take a lot of time and explain things to people, and we really cared, and we wanted to onboard people, and etc. And I think the have fun staying poor thing is it's a
Uh-oh. Might have lost you, bro. So we were just talking about
oh
Bitcoin
yeah.
maximalism, just as we got interrupted with an outage on one of our ends. So let's get into that. Like, first of all, best question is,
Yeah.
and I know the answer, are you a maximalist?
Yes.
For those that
Yes.
don't know what a
I am a
maximalist, why don't you explain what a maximalist is, Bitcoin maximalist?
So there's two types of maximalists actually, which is something that a lot of people aren't aware of. There are platform maximalists who believe that everything in the cryptocurrency space should be built on top of Bitcoin, and then there are monetary maximalists who believe that basically the only thing that's happening here is money,
Okay.
and that Bitcoin is the next global reserve currency,
Yeah.
right? And so I would put myself in both camps. I actually am a monetary maximalist and I am a platform maximalist. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that has the potential, to be innovative in the future. Me and you always go back and forth
Yeah.
on innovation, and
Yep.
like, I can see things that could form in the near future. I don't see anything currently, but I could see things occurring that would be great if they were built on Bitcoin or a side chain or on Lightning.
Sure.
And I remain open to that. So I'm not entirely closed to that. But yeah, I mean, essentially the term Bitcoin maximalism comes from Vitalik Buterin when he was launching Ethereum. There were a lot of people that were giving him a lot of static and pushback about Ethereum because, a lot of us, I myself was around at that time, felt that the project didn't make any sense. It had a lot of scammy dynamics about how the token was launched, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list is long, right? It was fundamentally centralized. It ended up getting broken. There were rollback, et cetera, right? And so in order to sort of discredit Bitcoiners, Vitalik called us all Bitcoin maximalist as a dig. And we sort of took it on like, yeah, fuck yeah, we're Bitcoin maximalist,
That didn't work.
So that's where it comes from. And basically, Bitcoin maximalism is just sort of the social layer that has grown around Bitcoin, the protocol, and it is an effort in order to get people quickly aligned on Bitcoin, to steer people away from the myriad of scam projects that are in the space. There are a lot of things that are outright scams that are looking to steal money from people, and an effort to educate. And it sort of works also like Bitcoin's immune system. So, we had a civil war in Bitcoin back in 2016, 17 timeframe. We were fighting over the block size, very, esoteric debate in the community, sort of an ideological one. Really, it boiled down to, does Bitcoin act as a medium of exchange first or a store of value first? It was like a chicken egg problem, and the community fought over it really harshly. And there were a lot of bad actors in the space at the time who were essentially trying to co-opt Bitcoin for their own purposes. And maximalism acted like, a defense layer against those sort of that social engineering and those social attacks. And so it's an immune system, but like any immune system, it's not perfect. Sometimes it goes off the rails and attacks people who are, it becomes an autoimmune issue.
And I
where,
think
like,
that's the experience that I've seen.
Yes.
Not for the most part, but I have seen this, right? Where we're in the rooms. Now, I wasn't a part of Bitcoin Twitter, as they call it, the people that tweet about Bitcoin all the time.
Yeah.
Going back, I was running my company, so I wasn't even focused. Or the subreddits and stuff where people talked about it a lot. Also wasn't my focus. First time I experienced all of you guys, for some reason, some weird confluence of serendipity, everybody showed up on Bitcoin Twitter, showed up on Clubhouse. And I don't know how I got there. I guess you search for topics of interest, and obviously I own Bitcoin, so I looked for Bitcoin. I was like, I wonder if people are talking about this. And then, man, were they talking about it, right? And somehow I got pulled up to the stage at one point and told my little story, because back then it used to be like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is my bio. It's so corny how these things.
I'm done speaking.
Yeah, and I'm done speaking. All that shit, but we don't do that in the Bitcoin rooms. And so I started to, develop relationships with you and other folks in the Bitcoin community. And some of those folks, it comes off as close-minded and absolutism, almost like a cult. And I use that very.
Yeah.
I know it's not a cult. You know what I'm saying? So when Frank and Michael Saylor were talking and he was calling it a cult and you're driving a cult to Michael Saylor, I was like, it's not a cult, dude. But I understand where he's coming from with that. We all have the laser eyes in our photos. It feels that way. And there's also this like kind of closed-minded absolutism. Like this is the bottom line no matter what. And so if anyone asks a question and they get shouted down, that's the part that I get it, man. You guys have been doing this for 5, 6, many, even longer than that, years. But the new guy coming in for the first time that has the question, it's a legitimate question sometimes. And maybe once in a while, I've seen it once in a while where they're really just trying to promote the shitcoin stuff. And you have to like sniff it out and be like, is he being genuine with these questions? Or, and some are not. And I have seen that,
Sometimes the problem with it, when people get quote unquote shouted down, like let's say I'm a person, I come in, I ask a question about, hey, I heard about quantum computing and quantum computing is going to kill Bitcoin. You can say that in 8 seconds, and it takes 20 minutes to defuse the bomb that you basically placed in the room, right? Because the answer is very complicated. Or governments are going to ban Bitcoin. That's something you can say in 3 seconds that takes another 20 minutes to diffuse. So in many respects, it's a DDoS on the room and of the people listening, right? That's true. And if you really want to know about these things, you're going to have to go read an article about it on your own time, Fundamentally, like for me, when I hear those things, I usually think the person is coming in bad faith, right? Because what happens is you have bought into an altcoin or a shitcoin's marketing pitch that it does XYZ thing. Like they create a problem with Bitcoin and then they sell you a solution using their coin. Right. So they say Bitcoin is susceptible to quantum attacks. We have a quantum resistant algorithm. Well, no such thing exists, right? But if you're a non-sophisticated participant or a new market entrant, you're going to look at that and be like, well, maybe they do have a quantum resistant, whatever, right? And so it's just very difficult when people's financial interests are, you've heard that famous quote that it's very difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary is dependent on him, understanding the opposite, or I forget how it goes. Yeah. But it's essentially that. It's alignment of interest. Everybody in the space has a financial interest. You can usually tell when they don't because their questions do come off in good faith. But if you've come in recently and you bought Ethereum or Tron or Dogecoin or Cardano or whatever, and then you want to ask the Bitcoiners questions about why Bitcoin is essentially a piece of shit that's doomed to failure because you heard this from the Cardano people, well, we're not going to be very receptive to that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's become over time very easy.
By the way, the other thing that I've noticed on Clubhouse, which is an entirely different medium than the other platforms that you guys are on, is that you could be in a room for hours. We spend hours sometimes. It's like in and out. Like, oh, shit, I gotta do shit with the kids. I'll be back in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever. And we just go in and out when we're bored, right? It's like, I got nothing else to do. So you go in there and you're on the stage. Someone comes up, asks a question. Like you said, one of these kind of FUD questions, I guess, right? And then 20 minutes later, the exact same question comes up because people in the audience are coming and going. And you're like, God, it's exhausting. I just answered this shit. Whereas on Twitter, you would just relink and go, read this, stop, and you could be done.
And, in some respects, it's been good for Bitcoiners, I think, because it's gotten their elevator pitches more tight, more succinct. So that's a good part of it. Like I can answer now a hardware wallet question in 30 seconds, whereas I used to answer it, in 5 minutes. Same thing with cold storage versus hot storage. That's a question people like to ask a lot. Or, what is Bitcoin versus shitcoins versus this versus that? It's Bitcoin. The problem is Bitcoin is so multidisciplinary. And honestly, like it really only appeals to people that are either super high IQ or super low IQ. Everybody in the middle gets lost in the sauce, right? That's a lot of people. If you're super high IQ, you're like, Bitcoin is the next global reserve currency. And if you're super low IQ, you're like, Bitcoin is the next global reserve currency. If you're in the middle, you're like, oh, Bitcoin has problems. The government might ban it. This might have, whatever, et cetera. Not thinking in your head, my coin might get banned by the government also. My coin might be susceptible to quantum attacks also, right? Like, and I think it's hard to triangulate, like if you don't know anything about cryptography, who the good cryptographers are, who's working on, because Ethereum, for instance, likes to say like there are so many devs working on Ethereum, right? And there aren't as many devs working on Bitcoin. It's like, well, each dev in Bitcoin is, I mean, that's the Mount Everest of cryptography. So everybody that's up there is the Michael Jordan of the thing they do, right? Whereas, it's like saying there are so many high school football players, right? And there's not that many guys in the NFL. It's the same thing.
That's funny.
Essentially.
Let's talk about.
Yeah, I mean, they're just a lot.
Let's talk about orange pilling. Have you orange pilled people in your family? Because I think you told me your mother-in-law, but like, how many people in your family? What about like, cousins or anything like that? If you had cousins or. And just what about your in-laws? Like, tell me about like the people close to you, because I know you've orange pilled tons of people on Twitter, right? I mean, you're notorious for it.
No one.
Nobody.
Literally no one.
Well, you did help your mother-in-law, right? But you did it on your own.
Yeah, but she didn't. She doesn't even know what she's invested in. You know what I mean? Like,
you just did it. You just took the money and did it.
I just did it. Yeah, because it needed to be done. Yeah. And so I just stepped in and did
That's
it.
great.
What I really, honestly, thinking back on this, what I really should have done. Was I should have opened a fund, a private fund for the family, and then I should have had family members just, put money in and trust me, right? That's what I should have done. Because you tell people about it, they don't really want to deal with all the headache. But if they knew you were managing on their behalf, they'd probably be more willing to be like, okay, here's $10,000. What? Yeah. So that's what I should have done in retrospect. But no, man, nobody listened to me at all.
But you know that there's like a 50 to 100x potentially growth ahead. You could still do that, I guess, right? And they've seen you.
I still could. Yeah.
Now you're like, fuck them.
They're not going to listen.
Yeah,
They're not going to listen. Yeah, it's not even so much resentment on my part or anything. It's just more like, here's the thing. I've been offering my helping hand for so long. I've had repeated conversations with, you about it. And you have continuously told me you're not interested. You think it's a scam. You think it's a this. You think it's a that. And it's okay. I hear you. It took 5 years, but I hear you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bother you about it anymore. I think it becomes, what I have noticed though, is that people in my real life have been secretly stacking behind my back.
That's great.
And they come
They're
to
embarrassed
me.
They don't have enough.
Yes. And they come to me and they go, hey, I have 3 coins.
That's
and I'm
great.
like, you do? And they're like, yeah, I was stacking all during the bear market, because I think they wanted to, maybe this is a part of my personality or maybe it's a flaw of human nature, but they want it to seem like it was their idea and not mine.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't want to seem stupid. They want to seem smart too.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I also invested in Bitcoin.
Sure.
Nothing to do with you though. Just, I just invested on my own because I'm smart. Right. And so there's a lot of that, which I like because I just want them to have exposure no matter what, doesn't matter to me how they get exposure. But yeah, it's been much easier on Twitter to have an impact on strangers, which, you would think it would be unintuitively, you would think it would be the opposite, or it's sort of unintuitive because you would think it would be the opposite. But yeah, people on Twitter have listened to me much more. During the bear market, I sort of came out and I was like rallying the troops. I was marshaling these guys like with a war cry, which is like, we're going to stack. Bitcoin's cheap. Bitcoin is going to $1 million. You better get some now. If you don't get some, you're going to be sorry. If you don't do it, it's because you're weak and you're pathetic and you're sad, like that kind of stuff. And a bunch of young dudes who had come in for the 2017 madness and mania, the bull run that happened, stuck around and were like, who's this guy screaming at me? Yeah. And I was like, it's me. And they actually listened to me. Like, I know, dude, many young kids I know who are under 21 dropped out of college, got jobs on construction sites, and began stacking. Lived with their parents and stacked up the money. And now these young kids under 20, they can't even legally drink at a bar, have like $500,000.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine having $500,000?
These guys must love you, bro.
Dude, oh no, it's like a crazy thing. Yeah. And it's all because they sort of believed in themselves, really. I was just the guy motivating them
pushing
to be like, hey,
bit.
go out. Yeah, believe in yourself. Go get it done. Yada, yada, yada. And it feels good to have an impact on people in that manner. You know what I mean? Like, to really create prosperity in other people's lives, right? Like, it's a good feeling,
I'm bringing up your Twitter because I think your pinned account, what's your new number, by the way? It used to be 3.
It's American HODL 41.
Okay, 40. We're doing 41 exactly until next month. Did you keep the pinned tweet up there? No, you didn't. Your last pinned tweet, I think you said something along. What was the last pinned tweet that you had? It was. I believe in myself.
You know what? You know what I did before I bought Bitcoin? I believed in
I
myself.
fucking believe in
Start
myself.
there.
I think you said.
I did. I fucking believed
I
in
think that's what
myself.
you said, and that's what you're telling everybody else. It's like, listen, I'm only giving you the nudge in the tip, but you got to believe in yourself.
Yeah, and it's like nobody else believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I had to believe in myself.
Right.
I had to want better for myself. I had to believe that I was right because nobody else thought I was right.
Yeah.
Everybody around me thought I was wrong and I was crazy and I was insane. And, you know, to be honest, I like that better.
Yeah.
I've grown accustomed to that. You know, I like when everybody thinks I'm wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Now in the
You're
bull
underdog.
market, everybody thinks I'm a genius.
Yeah.
You know,
you want to be an underdog. Nobody wants to be.
exactly. It feels great to be the underdog.
100%.
When everybody's and you feel like you have a secret.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, this is my secret that Bitcoin is going to be explosive in 2021 and go to the moon. You know, and nobody believes your secret and nobody thinks you're right, and so you get that juice of being the underdog and being super relentless and just being like, I'm going to do crazy things during the bear market in order to put myself in a position to win later, and you're going to have to eat your words. It just is what it is, you know?
Speaking of Relentless, you introduced me to the book, 2013 book by Tim Grover, Relentless, same name, who was the personal trainer for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and who was the other?
Yep.
There was another big one. Dwayne, was it? I don't remember. There was a third.
Dwayne Wade.
Was it Dwayne Wade? Okay, yeah, Dwayne Wade. And he said there's 3 types of people in the world. There are coolers, closers, and cleaners, which are basically synonymous with good, great, and unstoppable. If you're relentless, you are unstoppable. In many ways, I view the cleaners synonymous with docents, what I call docents. And I think that's why you guys brought it up to me. It was you and Samson, and you guys were really, really talking about this book. And it was either you or Samson, and they were like, you know, I think your show is like talking about cleaners. I was like, yeah, I call them docents, but yeah. And I read the book. I read the book in like 2 days. I was like, this is actually listened to the audiobook to be clear, but it was totally, I don't have time to read. I just gotta listen while I'm doing other shit, you know? But you know, docents as well as the cleaners, they refuse to be satisfied, right? Or just giving it their best. Like they don't just give it their best. They go to the utmost degree to win. They're obsessive, right? And to be a hodler, you have to be obsessive. There's no question about that. You have to work endlessly hard, practicing your craft, combining your talents, I think, to kind of get you to where you want to get with this obsessive behavior, which is the practice. Like brought CJ Wilson on. That dude is a fucking cleaner like I've never seen. I mean, he wasn't a professional athlete as a kid. He wasn't even an all-state baseball player, but he slowly, incrementally, with tiny little adjustments here and there, he's just so smart about how he got to where he was. I have so much respect for CJ. It's not even funny.
Oh, dude, CJ told me this story that I never forget where he, when he was 12 years old, was visualizing striking out Ken Griffey Jr. And then he got to the league and struck out Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, that is the definition of cleaner, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's sitting there, a little 12-year-old boy laying in his bed in California thinking about striking out fucking Ken Griffey. I mean, the level of insanity that you have to have.
But he put in the work like every day. Like I text with him about my kids with soccer and stuff, and which is the coolest fucking thing in the world. I'm talking about a professional baseball player, one of the best, all-star, you know. You know what's funny, by the way? A-Rod comes into the room the other day, and I'm like, you got to get on here. He's like, I'm walking my dog with my kids right now. Sorry. He doesn't give a fuck. He goes, tell him he only hit on me twice in 11 years. I fucking love it, dude. Like that's that competitive behavior. Like let him fucking know it that I remember. He only hit off me 2 times. Every other time was a walk or
you ever run into these people who believe in the secret, you know, the secret, like the law of attraction, right? But they don't do the work necessary. They think like, if I just think about it a lot, it'll just come to me, right? I hate those people.
Yeah, like, it's not real. You got to do the work. Right?
Yeah, I hate those people.
It's called wishing.
The law of attraction. Yeah, the law of attraction, or having a lot of focus, or being.
I think visualization. I believe in visualization. I don't believe in just wishing for it, but you have to visualize where you want.
No, visualizing, like being focused.
Yeah.
You know, there was this anecdote I heard one time that you know, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates were at the same dinner. And I think the dinner was organized by Gates Sr., Bill's father, who was also a very successful person. And they went around the room and they asked everybody what the secret to their success was. And Bill and Warren, independent of each other, gave the same answer, one-word answer: focus. Yep. They're just more focused than everyone else.
Yeah, you know? I read a book that helped us really sell the company. It was called Built to Sell, and it was really just about refocusing in the business on one particular vertical or subject matter that a potential suite of buyers would be interested in. And that's exactly what we did. We refocused. We were called Gamers Media, and we changed the name to Yashi, which is what they know it as now. And we focused on local video. had nothing to do with local video in the book, but it was like, is there something that you could focus on that, and that made sense because they're old media companies that would want to buy a digital advertising company like television, which ended up buying us, or newspapers, print, it could be radio, billboards, right? And all of them have to figure out a digital strategy. And I was like, oh my God, let's focus on local because all of those companies and verticals in advertising, so like focus is 100%. But let me ask you about being a cleaner or docent in this case. Are hodlers cleaners or docents? And like just buying and holding something, explain to everybody, because we talked about this, we touched on it a little bit, explain the amount of focus that you need to have and what you do every day so that you don't fuck yourself up, because you kids, there's major dips in Bitcoin where you could like totally screw yourself. Maybe I'll take half off the table, and you don't, right? Like, so explain that, like how it is versus like an athlete who's focusing in, I got to figure my hand movements, or if I'm pitching, CJ was telling me about how he did things with the ball, and this, it's like all that stuff is entirely different type of focus, but nonetheless, right? So as a hodler, what was your focus?
Yeah, I think hodling, like I said this earlier, like people mistake it for being passive. They think you just buy it, you hold it, whatever. Exactly. It's a very active process. It's an active meditation because there are so many things that happen, in Bitcoin that are very scary, and you could easily sell out your position and protect what you have. But to hodl for like basically eternal, glory, to hodl to the place where you get like a level of wealth that is very meaningful for your life, that is a true hero's journey. And, it takes a lot. The market is really trying to wear you out and scare you out, right? There's this expression, or it's a quote. I wish I had the whole quote, but it's essentially from this book, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. And he says, in my entire investing career, there are always early bulls and bull markets and early bears and bear markets. But the men who can both be right and sit tight through discomfort are the people who win. They're the uncommon men who end up winning at the end, because it's easy to be right. There were a lot of people that were right on Bitcoin when it was, $1, and then they sold it at $10. They got a 10x on their money, right?
My buddy Josh, remember?
Yeah,
remember that guy?
There's tons of stories like that. The guys who had 1,000 Bitcoin when they were $100 a piece, and who sold them and now have 2 Bitcoin. Yeah. Right. Yep. Because it's extremely difficult. These drawdowns, especially that we have endured in Bitcoin, the bear markets, to see your wealth in 2017 be at $20,000, per Bitcoin, right? Like I became a multimillionaire for the first time in my life when that happened, and then by the end of the bear market, I wasn't. It's extremely
like, I don't
painful.
know, man. I'm second questioning. What am I thinking?
And while that's going on, the world is telling you. They're reaffirming all of the bad thoughts that you're having about yourself. They're telling you, yes, you are stupid. Yes, you are.
And everybody reminds you when you're wrong. Everybody.
Yep. They go, oh yeah, you get the same friends who didn't listen to you about Bitcoin text you, and they go, how's that Bitcoin doing? And you're like, it's not doing well, obviously. Yeah, thanks. I get it. Yeah, thanks. Right. Like, but in your head, you have a long-term belief in both yourself and in your thesis that this thing is still happening. And it's going into the, multi-millions per coin range. That's what we all believe is going to happen. And, when, like, okay, for instance, like we're in a bull market now. At the top in 2021, let's say we get to $500,000 a coin, just as an example, which is, I think, a pretty reasonable goal of where we might be headed. And then we fall all the way back down
30 or something
to $80,000.
Who knows? Yeah.
There will be so many articles written about how Bitcoin is dying, about what a failure it is. It's over.
Bill Gates was right.
You will have to sit through that discomfort and make an active decision every day not to sell your Bitcoin. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you have to be relentless. You have to be focused. You have to be a cleaner. You have to be all of these things, or you got to find a way in which to distract yourself, so that you don't get caught up in the emotions of it. For some people, I think it is better to like take a passive approach and, buy Bitcoin and then like forget that you have it, right? Like there are a lot of stories about the guys who forgot they had Bitcoin and then found it. Same thing as being a VC who's in an like illiquid investment, right? Like you're locked in at that point.
No choice to be a billionaire.
Exactly. And then you find it and you're like, wait, what is this $10 million? That's crazy. There was a guy on.
That's how. By the way, that's what happened with Open Door. I had no idea I still owned it, and then I saw Chamath bringing it public through a SPAC, and he was at Mayfield when they were an investor, and I was like, I go, shit. I go, I wonder if that sounds so familiar. So I go in, I bought it through, Angel List, you know. I think it was,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, it was Naval Syndicate, if I'm not mistaken. So I go in and I look and I'm like, holy shit, my cost basis is like single digit low million, you know. This fucking thing's going for 4.8 billion as an IPO through a SPAC.
Yeah.
And then they popped and it's up to 15 billion. And I'm like, because you're in a lockup period. So honestly, on the way up, I probably would have exited if it was a public stock. I honestly would have, right? From like 3 million to like 300 million is unbelievable, right? And then it goes to 4 billion plus. If I had an opportunity, I probably would have sold right at the IPO, but you get a 6-month lockup. So now I'm locked in. I'm like, oh God, I hope this thing stays here, right? And then it pops to 15 billion. And I'm like, okay, now I look smart, but mostly because I didn't have a chance to screw myself up, you know? It's much harder in Bitcoin, my point, you know?
Wealth accumulation in general, hodling especially, is very simple. It's very simple. The principles for wealth accumulation are simple. It's not easy though. It's extremely, extremely difficult. It's just like being, physically disciplined. You know what I mean? Like you're in good shape. Like you gotta eat right every day, keep your calories low, hit the gym. That shit is fucking hard. But it's very simple. Yeah, there's like 3 things you can do that if you do them every day, you're going to be in really good shape, right? Same thing financially. And I think people think in their minds that things must be complicated in order for them to succeed.
It's elusive to people. The whole thing of like wealth is elusive. They're like, well, there's very few people that have it. I'll probably never have it. And they must have just gotten lucky for that. That's probably what happens. It makes them feel better about it.
Yeah. Humans also tend to have an activity bias, right? Where they have a very difficult time sitting still. Like one of the hardest things.
Dude, that's why we're doing a podcast.
Yeah. No, I know. It's like you can't just sit still in a room by yourself and just, watch the wall. Yeah. Like that is very difficult, right? In fact, like most of humanity's issues come from the fact that we can't do that. You know what I mean?
So true.
You don't yes, there is a lot of terrible things happening in the world, right? Mm-hmm. But like, a lot of them are
But I mean, Warren Buffett, same thing, right? He's a hodler, right? He's like the OG hodler. I mean, and what does he say him and Charlie do? They read. They just sit there and read books and articles and newspapers and earnings reports and stuff. That's all they do.
The cyber hornets are kind of like a decentralized group of Warren Buffetts, really. I mean, we're just people who are going to buy and hold until the market gives us a price that we think is worthy of parting with our Bitcoin. Yeah. And for some of us, that price is infinity. Right? Like some of us will never part with our Bitcoin. Yeah. For some, the price is $10 million a coin, $20 million a coin. But, people who want these coins, these are very rare, and you're going to have to come correct with a better price. Like when I see 50K, there's no way I'm giving you my Bitcoin for 50K. And I bought them for 200, right? So most people would have sold at 1,000, at 10,000, at 20, at 30, at 40, at 50. I'm not going to sell ever, right? Like I might peel off 1 or 2 coins if it buys me like a really sick mansion. But and until we're at that point, we are not done. The job, like this is the relentless thing. The job is not done. I love it. You know what I mean? It's not over. We haven't finished out this. It's like Kobe Bryant style, right? It's like Kobe Bryant wins a championship and he's sitting there sad. And it's like, well, why are you sad, Kobe? Because I haven't won 8 championships. The job is not done. You know what I mean? I haven't beat Mike. The job is not over, And it's the same kind of thing. It's like, hey, man, you became a millionaire off of Bitcoin, right? It's like, great. The job is not over. It's not done. We're not there yet, I'm not going to sit here and celebrate right now.
So you are the guy that created the 6.15 meme, right? Right? The 6.15 Bitcoin meme. That's you, right?
It's true.
Tell me the story.
So, okay.
You've told the story 100 times, but I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny though. So I told you that I was going out and I was helping rally the troops during the bear market, and there's always been these numbers in Bitcoin that you like stacking goals. It used to be when I first entered, the number was 21 Bitcoin, right, which was 1/1,000,000th of the supply. And so if you could achieve 1/1,000,000th of the supply, that was a really good number. And at the time, it was like $8,000 ish, 8 to 10 grand to get in the 21 club. So pretty reasonable goal. I wanted a number that was a little bit higher than that because I felt that Bitcoin was more stable and secure at this point. So if you wanted to participate in the same reward and get into an exclusive club, well, you're going to have to put in like 30, 40 grand, right? So I picked a number that was around that area. and that number was 6.15. It's a totally random number. I just fucking made it up, and then I just started shouting it at people on Twitter, like, being like, do you have you need 6.15? I have 6.15, blah, blah, blah. I used to do marketing for a living, so I know how easy it is to implant ideas in people's heads. It's really just about repetition more than anything. The idea doesn't even have to be particularly good, right? Why do we all think about Coca-Cola all the time? It's because Coca-Cola is pervasive. It's everywhere you go in society, right? It's everywhere on the planet, really. That's why it's like the third most drank drink after like water and tea is Coca-Cola. So anyway, I just started repeating this ad nauseum, and then people were like, "Why should I get 6.15? What's the point of 6.15?" And I was like, and I told this is a group of young males, so take this for what it's worth. But I was like, if you have 6.15, you will get everlasting riches and big titty bitches. I'm just saying, women, very beautiful women are going to come up to you. Okay, so I use that as like a lure for the young
and people
dudes.
repeat this without you being yeah, I see it all the time on Twitter. I see it in Clubhouse. You're not even in the room, and they're like, 6.15. And I'm like, that's so awesome, dude.
You know how stupid young guys are. Yeah. If you tell them that if they do this thing, they're going to get laid, they're like, well, then shit, that's what I'm going to do.
It's awesome.
So yeah, that's essentially the story behind
HODL, what?
It's a very juvenile meme.
That's great though. I mean, it's a real thing. Like, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people that come in and out of these rooms, and it comes up all the time. So that's pretty cool.
It's hilarious.
You left your mark. What is your superpower?
My superpower is knowing how other people think or what other people are thinking. That's my superpower. I've always been good at that because I needed that to survive when I was young.
So intuition.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Like, it's a form of intuition.
Yeah, intuition. Intuition's my superpower. Yeah, I just know without having to detail it. Like I know what you're thinking. I know the type of person you are. I'm always trying to figure out. And not in a judgmental way, or I'm trying to size people up. I'm just trying to understand for my own, like a feeling of my own self-preservation.
In some ways,
yeah, exactly. Because, it's like the story of me being a kid. Like I needed to know, first off, when I was very young, I needed to know how my mother was thinking so that I could avert disaster. Because oftentimes when I was little, this is a schizophrenic woman. She would put me in disastrous situations all the time. We ended up like in the ghetto at somebody's house, and they were smoking crack and all sorts of shit like this, right? And so me just trying to stave this off early, I had to be a little kid figuring out what she was going to do next, and then basically manipulating her away from doing that thing. So that, because that was my only tool. I wasn't now I'm a big guy, right? So I don't feel the same way like I need to manipulate people. But when I'm a little kid, I needed to manipulate my mother in order to get results that were more desirable than undesirable. And then same thing when I was at other people's homes, I needed to like be the type of kid that they wanted to invite back to spend time with their family, right? And like what could I find that was going to make them like me enough to invite me back so that I don't have to go fucking stay at my own goddamn house, because I hate staying at my own house. And then later the sort of intuitive thing morphed into like what are women thinking? What is the market thinking? How can what is the person I'm selling to thinking? What do they need? So yeah, I would say that like intuition is sort of my superpower. And now I'm pretty good at it, where I can just kind of tell you like what you're thinking about, what a group of people might be thinking about at any given point in time. I used to do this thing where I curated different feeds across social platforms. So I would curate a Twitter that was a specific echo bubble for this type of personality. Then I would do an Instagram that was a specific echo bubble for this type of personality, specific for this type of personality. And I would read all of them. These were all like based on audiences that I was marketing to. Yeah. And I would read them daily. And that was my way to get inside the heads of the people that I was selling to. So that was actually very effective for me in business, because everybody has their own, predilections and preconceived ideas and notions and things that they think are unique to themselves, but are actually shared by a mass of people that have a similar personality type.
Yeah, there's types of personalities. You're right. Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to figure out once you know the type of personality that you're like. I'll give you a great example. My wife is a NICU nurse, or she was a NICU nurse before she retired to become a homemaker. But we went to her master's orientation, and it was a whole room of girls that were just like her. They all had the same fucking personality because she's very like type A. She had this whole list of questions written down that she was going to ask, and literally like 3 rows in front of her, the minute the presentation stopped, some girl's like, yes, hello, and she asked all the questions that were on my wife's list, and I was like, we're in a room full of you. This is just everybody's.
It's so funny.
It's hilarious. And really the Bitcoin maximalist thing is a specific personality type. Those of us who feel the need to hang out on Bitcoin Twitter, we all tend to be like sort of libertarian right. Whereas the shitcoiners, the Ethereum crowd are libertarian left. And so a bit of the division
because they're like more open-minded thinkers, all that kind of stuff. They always want to benefit of their
They're also looking to actively scam on people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I get it. But
they're more comfortable. They're more comfortable with lying, whereas the Bitcoiners, like conservatives, get really pissed off when you don't tell the truth, right? Whereas liberals are more comfortable with lies.
Yeah, I would say for me, the number one characteristic that I look in people is honesty. If you break that honesty, you're done with, in my opinion, done. You can't recover. You cannot recover from that.
Yeah, I think that's crucial because the problem with people who lie is that they will lead you down this primrose path and then abandon you at the end of the path, right? So you don't want to. So if you catch yourself like some people might say you're harsh, but I think you're totally dead on accurate. Which is if you catch yourself taking one step down that path with somebody who's a liar, you got to stop it right there, root it out right there, because you might end up all the way down.
I've been down. And the thing is, I've been burned a few times, and what I found is that every time, if you go back in the history with the relationship, you'll see that there were little lies that you let go, and it turned into a bigger one you found out later. It always is the case. It's never like one time, one big thing. There's usually a pattern in some sort.
The problem with lying, and sometimes we lie to ourselves. I mean, we probably lie to ourselves more than anybody, right? Yeah. The problem with lying is that every liar wants to tell you some version of the same lie, which is you don't have to accept any pain. Okay. Like if you just lie to yourself about this thing, instead of believing that it's real and it's going on and correcting it, which is often going to be a painful event because many of the things that are true are painful, you can avoid all that pain, right? By just not believing that it's happening. And we lie to ourselves, we lie to others in the same manner.
It's so confusing when I see people do this. I see this all the time. And I'm like, what? I don't understand. Can't you see the truth for what it is?
But then the problem is that it compounds. So the pain compounds and then it comes due, and you end up in this woeful circumstance where you have lost all of this time, which is one of your scarcest resources. So you are being stolen from. Whether you're doing it to yourself or whether other people are doing it to you, it's a disaster. It's a tragedy because, you ever go to the retirement village or whatever, and you see the people who have made the wrong choices in life and you look in their eyes. I mean, it's an ocean of sadness. It is just immense pain. People that fucked up their relationships with their children or whatever it is, right? It's so brutal, man. And like, for me, I live my life for that like rocking chair moment at the end when I'm looking back on everything and I'm trying to, make the right decisions on my way there. And yes, oftentimes it's extremely painful to take the truth head on. It hurts up front, but then you get it out of the way and the pain does not compound so that you end up in this woeful circumstance later,
What's your kryptonite?
Let me think. Anger. Giving into anger is my kryptonite. Anger, pride, ego.
Yeah.
Those
One of my questions I usually ask people is, how do you balance your pride, ego, and humility? My grandfather always told me, try to balance it, but it can't be even all the time. There's times where you need to have an ego, you need to have pride. There's times where you need to check that and have more humility. I'm always trying to be self-aware of that. I'm not always mindful of it at moments in time, but I always reflect within minutes or hours usually, and I'm like, oh, what the fuck was I just doing? And I'll apologize or something if I've stepped out of line with somebody or something. How about you?
Yeah, over time I've gotten less prone to anger. I've become slower to anger as I've aged. I think like a lot of us, like who are hot-headed dudes when we're young, we just fly off the handle like immediately. And I had to like just be honest with myself that like, okay, I'm just in here as a scared little boy who is being sort of a bitch about whatever this thing is and doesn't want anybody to hurt him. You know what I mean? And just realizing that and being like, I don't need to fly off the handle. And if I do, like, I'm modeling such bad behavior for my daughters. I never yell at my wife or anything ever since we had kids. Like when we were in our 20s and we were together, we used to definitely have fights all the time, you know? And then when the kids came, we just both knocked that shit off.
Yeah.
It was like, what are we fucking accomplishing? We're having some version of the same argument every single time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and anger consumes you. You know what I mean? Like, so you're not behind the wheel of your life anymore, you know?
Yeah, and it's not just anger. It's also if someone burns you, like for me, forgiveness
Revenge.
is like revenge. Yeah, like for me, it's forgiveness. Like, and so many people around me be like, "Oh, I hate that guy," and I'm like, "Whatever, dude. He was doing what he thought was in his own best interest. Like, what are you forgiving him?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am forgiving him. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm in a different place in my life, and I don't even care. Like, I'm being sued by somebody right now, and I'm like, whatever. Like, I'll deal with the lawsuit. It'll come and go, and I'll never mention the guy, and I'll just move on from my life and fuck him. It is what it is, you know? And like, he's just doing what he thinks I guess he believes what he's saying. I don't think he does, but I can't dwell on what I think he thinks or believes, or it doesn't even matter. You just keep moving in a direction that you're moving in, and don't let them live in your head rent free. Like, fuck it, you know?
Well, isn't it, you know, it's important that you adapt that mindset because as you become richer, haven't you noticed that people do take advantage of you more often? They view you like a wallet. They view you in a certain way. But you know, most of the time it's really rather sad, like, because they want to take advantage of you for like a couple $1,000 or something, you know, something that's not very meaningful to you, but is very meaningful to them. And so, you know, you have to rid that person out of your life, but going into the mode because I know you're a killer and you could go into that mode where you're like, I'm going to destroy this person's life. Right. But it's going to consume you. I once heard this thing that was so amazing about anger, which is like trying to get revenge on somebody is like holding a hot coal in your hand and like waiting around a corner to throw it at another person.
You're just burning yourself.
You're the one who's getting fucking burned, you know? Or it's like resentment is like drinking poison and thinking it's going to affect the other person. You're the one who's getting harmed in that action. So just like you said, for your own sanity, you got to just be like, listen, man, I'm not going to stop being vulnerable to new people, new experiences in my life just because I got burned, because that is going to close me off from so many potential avenues that might be amazing for me. And I might meet really cool people, have really cool experiences. And, you know, just everyone's going to get burned. This is life. This is life. We all get fucking burned, you know?
HODL, you got into Bitcoin pretty early. You acquired a pretty sizable stack. You've been able to retire, as you said. You've said this, so I'm just repeating you. You have an 8-figure net worth, right? So you have an 8-figure net worth. I believe it's going to 9 figures because we believe the price of Bitcoin is going to go 6 figures. I'm sorry, 6, and then obviously to 7+, you know?
Yeah.
What are you doing every day now? What the fuck do you do? You wake up in the morning, you got the kids. Like, what's motivating you moving forward? What are you focused on? Because you've retired, right? Like, you're done. So like, it's got to be just family. So how are you spending your days these days?
So, you know, I wake up, I get a black coffee, I go to the gym, I listen to a podcast. I'm always like, it's always AirPods all the time, just like you. I think me and you share that. Like, I always have AirPods, and I'm always reading audiobooks, listening to podcasts, listening to Clubhouse conversations, just listening all the time. I've actually been going a little bit away from Clubhouse and back to more audiobooks and podcasts because I find that when I'm talking, I'm not learning. Yeah. And so I really want to just be sitting and listening to smart people have good conversations, right? And then there's a time for talking. The time I find myself wanting to get off Clubhouse is when I'm not having new ideas, you know, because then I'm actually stifling myself. Because there's been like 2 weeks where I've just been listening to the sound of my own voice, you know, and like what a special person I am and all this bullshit, and like giving into my own ego, you know, like, look at me, I'm on the stage. I'm going to tell you how it is about Bitcoin, whatever. Stupid.
I'm an influencer on the stage.
So yeah, just listening to stuff all the time. I go to the gym. I come back. I like get a little bit of work done in my office or whatever. Usually have lunch with my wife, maybe get some time with her. Do shit that needs to be done around the house, and then the afternoons is all devoted to my kids from like 2 p.m. to like 7:30 when they go to bed. I'm just basically with them the entire time. We go to the park, do fun stuff, read books, watch stuff, whatever. And then I put them to bed, come back and fucking hang out with my wife a little bit. I'm exhausted from dealing with the kids all day, and then just go to bed. Basically, that's just every single day. So it's just a lot of reading, listening to stuff, and playing with my children, really.
And that's
all I ever did.
Kind of a future that you're going to have to foresee for the next several decades, I guess, right? You're not going to go operate another business, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, I feel like if I have it can't be a financial incentive for me anymore, because, you know, I'm at a place where like, I like this week when the Bitcoin price fell, I lost more money than most people ever make in their life,
Yeah.
right? So like, I'm in a place where I don't have to go out and work for, for financial means. But if I see an opportunity for a business that I think is a bigger mission that the world really needs and leaves some sort of a legacy or makes me feel good or whatever, and my kids are a little older and they're like, yo, you suck, dad, like we're sick of you, then maybe I will start a business. But for the next like 5 or 10 years, I think just hodling is the way to go. And I think the returns are going to be outsized in hodling versus going and starting a business or doing a startup or doing this or doing that. Like, I mean, it's brutal, dude. Entrepreneurship is fucking brutal too, like, I mean, me and you can look back on it very fondly, like now that we're out of it, but when you're in it,
we did
it's
well
just
too.
kill
So
and be killed. Yeah, exactly. It's like living in the jungle and you're just armed with a machete, and every day you just go out and fucking hope you don't get murdered.
I mean, I heard I watched the Apprentice, Celebrity Apprentice, and I forget who it was. I think it was I think it might have been Herschel Walker that was on the show. It was one of the athletes. Or who was the boxer? One of the boxers was on. He's got the British accent. I can't remember the guy's name. Like, I'm not a big boxer.
Can't remember. I didn't really watch
it. He was on the show one time, and somebody said something. They alluded to the fact that the guy could beat up Trump, or Trump could, whatever. And Trump looks at him and he goes, let me tell you something. I'm a pretty tough guy. What I do for a living, you got to be tough. All I do is fight people every day, and I freaking win. I was like, it's so true. Like, and people have their opinions about Trump, obviously, but the one thing you can't deny is that this guy didn't have to work. Even if you believe his father gave him $100 million, most people would have just hodled their $100 million invested in the S&P and not done a goddamn thing. Instead, he gets up every day, doesn't need to do it. You could say it's because he has an ego, whatever. He's getting up. He's productive in society. People are employed because of him, and he's fighting tooth and nail every day. I got respect for that. You may not like his politics, but the guy gets up and he's productive.
It's interesting too because, we can talk about Trump as a businessman and what his record is and blah, 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 but I do think that personality lends itself to being a CEO, being a wartime CEO, right? Like Steve Jobs was a wartime CEO. He had the same, in many respects, this exact same personality, right? But being the president is more about being a facilitator, a communicator, creating
I was talking about his business career.
Totally different things. But like you can see where it all unraveled for him because he just every single day was, I'm just going to fight whoever's in front of me. And that's not politics. No. Politics is about building, bridges between people, right? Like getting the other side to help you and, being a
he's not a good politician. No. Amazing. I think amazing at business. And people could try to say whatever they want about his business, but no, he's not successful. He's not rich. It's like, I'd like to be as poor as that guy is. So I don't know what you're talking about. It's true. I want to fly around in helicopters and private planes and live on the 90th floor or whatever the hell it is.
The one thing I'll say about Trump's business acumen is that his risk reward calculation is incredibly skewed because he is such a killer. Yeah. So he just feels like he can go into any situation and dominate it and win. And there's a lot of times in his career he should have stepped aside. Like also ego. His ego is just completely out of control. I think everybody can see that, and it's been corrosive to not only his political career but his personal relationships, his business relationships. It's been a very toxic thing for him in his life. I think he has probably narcissistic personality disorder. He can't shut that off. That's just him. He's always been that way, right? Yeah. And it's an interesting personality because he was able to totally dominate on the internet and on Twitter because people say the absolute worst things to you on Twitter. But if you love yourself more than anybody, it doesn't get in. Nothing gets in.
That's so true. Speaking of Trump, and that was spontaneous. I had no intention of bringing him up, but would you rather be feared or liked?
I would rather be feared. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that comes from the book Relentless, too. I think I remember him saying that, feared versus
I'd rather people view me as formidable, as somebody to be contended with, because, that's a defense mechanism thing. Then they won't fuck with you if they view you as formidable. If people like you, they'll stab you in the back. Yeah. And they do,
Are you addicted to success or are you addicted to the results in life?
I'm addicted to the end. I'm addicted to the end result.
So the incremental wins, right, for the accomplishment, not the overall arching, where am I going to be in 20 years, but it's like this incremental proving you're right along the way, right?
Yep. To me, partially why I would never sell my Bitcoin is because I still believe I'm right. I've always believed I'm right, and I'm right. It's like I love being right more than anything. I am not really in investing because I love money. That's not my why. My why is I love being right, and investing gives me a scoreboard for how right I was. So I like being the person who is the most right over the longest. Yeah, it's a game to me. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and I think that's the kind of mindset you have to attain a high level of wealth. You can't, because if I was in love with the money, I would look at the amount of money I lost just this last week, and I would be like, holy shit, that was a lot of money. I could have done a lot of things with that money.
Last 24 hours.
Could have bought a boat. Could have bought a mansion, Yeah, exactly. Like all of that, all of that kind of stuff. But I'm not in love with the money. I'm in love with being right. And for me, it's about planting a flag in the ground, and then 10, 20, 30 years in the future, being proven right in this way that is just, unequivocal, just nobody can argue with it. Like it's like I think about Tom Brady in this respect a lot. Like people hated Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Nobody hates Tom Brady anymore.
It's interesting.
You can't argue with it. You can't argue with it.
I never hated him, but I was just like, yeah, whatever. Bro, he always wins Super Bowls. And then he left and he did it again. I was like, dude, he's the best. He's the GOAT. It is what it is.
He was easy to hate. He's good looking. His wife's a supermodel. He was winning all those Super Bowls at a young age. He was really easy to hate. Everybody enjoyed hating him. Like when Eli Manning beat him in the Super Bowl, I think everybody enjoyed that, But now it's just like he's won so many times. He's so goddamn dominant. You just have to sit back and respect the greatness,
100%.
Same with Michael Jordan. I don't think people like Michael Jordan's personality. I think he's a dick.
I love it.
But you have to respect
I actually like Michael Jordan's personality. I loved watching him win. There was something different about Michael Jordan and Tom Brady. I don't think it's that he had the wife in this. I really don't think it's that. I think it was just watching the way he was on that court and commanding the way he was in that court, that alpha, that true male alpha behavior. Tom didn't really have that look in his face. It was he has it. I'm not saying he doesn't have. He's a fucking docent. He is definitely a cleaner. I'm not taking anything away from him there. There's just a different persona that they both had that made me gravitate towards Jordan.
The difference is Jordan was playing against everyone on the court.
Yeah.
He was playing against his opponents, and he wanted to dominate and crush them. So you would see him turn it on and go into dominator mode. Tom Brady is playing a different game. He's playing against time.
Yeah.
And that's a very different thing. So he is you look at the things he prioritizes. He prioritizes his body, his mind. He never lets himself take unnecessary shots. So he doesn't go into that kill or be killed mode as often.
Yeah.
It's about this like steady progression towards time to reach this goal that it has been unobtainable to basically everyone in the game of football.
Yeah.
Nobody has played as long as
I think
Tom
you're right.
Brady.
Like if you think about Jordan, like he would just take over a game at the end of the game, middle of the season, right? Like he's losing by 5 points, 10 points at the end of the fourth quarter. And it's like he just took over and won that game single-handedly. And it was like, holy shit.
They're different games too, right?
Yeah.
They're different games too. In basketball, you can take over. Basketball is a strong link sport where you're only as strong as your strongest competitor, and football is a weak link sport where you're only as strong as your weakest competitor. So like if your receiver drops the pass, you can't score.
That's right.
Right. So and a lot of times that has happened to Tom Brady where he's thrown the ball perfectly right to the guy and the guy drops it.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan didn't have that problem because he can take the ball right to the fucking hoop by himself.
That's what I respect.
And Jordan would say if I pass it to you and you don't score, you're not getting it again, right? Whereas Tom Brady doesn't have that luxury. He's got to pass it to somebody basically every single time.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's totally different
good analysis
things between them. But I think the mindset is very similar, similar mindset.
Warren Buffett says it takes 20 years to build your reputation and 5 minutes to destroy it. So how important is your reputation to you? We've talked about this around taking advisory roles and what have you. How important is honesty? We've talked about that too, and relationship to your reputation, and as well as how you assess other people's reputations. I'm just curious. We want to talk about reputation for a minute because to me it's a very important thing. Just as I said, honesty is.
I think in the cryptocurrency space at large, there's a lot of scamming that goes on because the prize is so large. If you come out with your own coin that does, allegedly does X, Y, and Z thing. Like for instance, EOS was one of the biggest ICOs in history. They took in like 150,000 Bitcoin or something, and then they never delivered much of anything, right? So there was a lot of incentive there for them to have this massive ICO, collect all this Bitcoin, and they still have that Bitcoin on the corporate treasury. So they have, you know what I mean? So you can see where the incentive comes from. To me, like it's kind of like your thing with honesty. It's like I can't trust people like that. I can't trust people who are doing the wrong thing and trying to win in the wrong ways. And I do think that karma's a bitch, and it ultimately will come for you, and it will be your undoing. It's I mean, it's like Aesop fable shit, really. It's like the story of the tortoise and the hare. You know, the hare is winning at first, and the tortoise thinks he's losing, and eventually the tortoise is the one who wins out, and the tortoise is the person who lives their life with honesty and integrity and doesn't screw people over. You know, that's the tortoise. The hare can get really far by being dishonest and not having much integrity and screwing over everybody around them. But, you know, the people that you meet on the way up are the same people that the people you step on the way up are the same people you're going to meet on the way down. Right. So like, to me, it's just very important to, and for my own moral code and compass so that I can sleep at night. I'm just not the kind of person who can fuck somebody over and then sleep well. I just can't do that. Right. Yeah. So it's very important for me not to be affiliated with anything. Like I've gotten offers to be an advisor on this project or that project or do this or do that. And I never had, like, for instance, I appear on Peter McCormick's podcast once a month, and Peter told me he would pay me for that. And I was like, nah, I'm good. Like you know what I mean? Like he was like, send me an invoice. And I was like, nah, like I'm fine. I just don't want to be beholden to anybody, you know, because especially like, the thing I was telling you about when I was doing, you know, corporate level marketing, you know, like, so in my career as a filmmaker and a production professional, you know, I think I have something like, last time I calculated it, it was like 10 or 15 billion views online. Wow. So it's a lot. There was a lot of influence there that, I was serving somebody else's interest. I was serving corporate interest, and I was serving interest that I didn't really understand. I was just a hired hand who had the ability to make this thing happen. And so I would make it happen for people. They would be very happy and they would pay me a lot of money. Now I just only want to serve my own interest, because I look back on some of the interests that I had served in the past, and I do feel regretful for having served them. So now that I have the level of wealth I have, I just only want to serve my own interests going forward. It's very important to me, you know, and no amount of extra money is going to like wipe away the stain that would leave on me if I did something wrong to somebody in some way, you know?
Yeah. You and I have discussed failure. I want to talk about this. We've talked about it on Clubhouse a bunch in front of everybody, but I love to do it on the show here. So in the tech world, you've said that one of the things you have a problem with is that they celebrate failure too much. It's like a badge of honor, so to speak, which you don't believe in. In fact, I think you've said how people, they shouldn't fail to begin with, I think is what you're basically saying. And I'd like you to just, because in tech, it's like, it is true, right? I had a tech company and we got sued. There was nothing I could do about it. We got sued. There was nothing we could do. We couldn't sustain the lawsuit, spent millions of dollars, and we ended up filing a bankruptcy. There are other people that run their businesses into the ground. It's their own fault, no fault of anybody else, you know? But there is a learning experience in that. It sucks for their investors if they had them, or if they didn't themselves in the capital they put up. And but you have some opinions on this, so I'd like to hear your opinion on failure.
Yeah. Well, you know, Silicon Valley, it's almost become like you know, a trope at this point. Like I think they made fun of it in that show Silicon Valley on HBO, where he calls failure pre-success. He goes, well, as we all know, failure is just pre-success. That's right. I mean, that's how much these young kids are being told to fail in the Valley, and like just go out and try it, and you know, move fast and break things and all that sort of stuff. And you know, I do think that a lot of that is great, because it gets people over the hurdle of, you know, most people are scared to try things. Because they're scared of failure. They're scared of all the social repercussions that come from failure, right? So if you have a culture that says, hey, it's okay to fail, you know, as long as you gave it your best effort, you know, you're going to get more at bats, right? Sure. You're going to get on base more. You're going to have a higher on base percentage. So the VCs have a vested interest in making sure that people try things and fail them, because they can take a scattershot approach and then ride the winner up. Like most VCs in the Valley, you know, they invest in all of the companies doing a particular thing, not just, exactly. So you want to find the one that's going to be dominant and is going to work, instead of never creating that value, having nobody ever try, and then you don't get the reward at the end. So in my opinion, though, as an individual, when you're looking out at the landscape, you don't want to jump too soon. You don't want to be the person who fails, because, and let's approach this from, you're already at a place where you haven't tried the thing yet. So you're young and you haven't been married yet. It's better to wait for the right person and get married at the right time and then stay in a lasting relationship than it is to marry the first person you meet when you're 19, or the first person you have sex with, right? And then jump to the next one. Like maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But the problem with failure is sort of this Darwinian level tragedy, and this is a framework I stole from Peter Thiel. It's simply always a tragedy. It's not really this thing where there's a lot of chaos and carnage, but along the way we reach innovation. The end state of most individuals' efforts is failure. Most, like, the default state of every business is dying in obscurity. That's where you start from. Failure is the default. So success is the thing that is rare in both, or it's harmful to the individual who has that adaptation, but sometimes there's a rare adaptation that allows that individual to succeed in its environment, and then that gets passed on, et cetera, et cetera. And that's technological success also. Same thing, but from a mimetic standpoint rather than a genetic standpoint. So to me, it's like Warren Buffett has this idea of the circle of competence. And he I don't know if you've ever seen this poster he has of Ted Williams on his wall, and like Ted Williams' strike zone and where his best pitches are. And he just has this idea around waiting for your pitch. And then when the pitch comes, it's right down the middle of the plate, knocking it out of the park entirely. And like, I think me and you have had this conversation a lot. And you always come from the place of all of those failures are very successful, in order, or are very important, I should say, in order to get to the successful innovation, right? And I 100% agree with you on that.
I call it iteration. It's an iterative process.
From a macro standpoint, iteration is very important to get to innovation. But if you have the ability to not be the failure, I would choose to not be. And I think sometimes just being patient, waiting, can be the defining factor. But timing is everything too. So if you wait too long, you're fucked also, right?
And sometimes you don't realize that the market isn't the right time, because when you're innovating and you're creating something that hasn't ever been created, you don't know that the market's not ready for it until you try to put it out there, and then you're like, damn, maybe we're too early for this. And that happens a lot in tech.
It's a tightrope, man. It's a tightrope. Like, being successful is very, very difficult. The default state of every organism is dying in obscurity, and the default state of every innovation or every enterprise is dying in obscurity. I mean, think about every restaurant that when you drive by down the street and you see like Great Wall Chinese restaurant, you're like, that's gonna fucking fail. And then you drive by 6 months later and it's not there anymore, and you go, yeah, of course,
saw that coming.
Right?
I did that with a restaurant.
You're thinking to yourself, thank God I'm not that guy. Thank God I'm not this guy who is an immigrant and he's fresh off the boat and he's put a lot of his time and energy and effort and capital into this. And this is a failure this is a tragedy in his life that he's going to lose his restaurant.
Most restaurants
I think about that. It's
like, why are they even trying them?
Thinking, exactly. So tech is the same way in my mind. I think, why did you guys?
I'll tell you the difference though. This is the difference, because I started this like acai bowl shop a few years ago. We did poke bowls and acai shop, and I did it with my cousin because I wanted to do something with my cousin. I wanted to do something that could be scalable and franchisable and all this stuff. I had friends that created Hand and Stone. He's going to be on my show at some point. This guy John Marco was my neighbor, and another friend that was in the franchising business for the Planet Fitnesses. He has like 70 locations. They're very scalable. I shouldn't have done food, right, for a model like that. That being said, we tried to do it. The stupid part about food is that there's a ceiling of potential on each location. There's only so much population and sales you could have. With tech, it's unlimited, right? So trying it in tech, you're basically saying, I'm going to give this a shot, and there's a potential I could become a billionaire, unless you're not going after a big market size. But if you're going after the right market size and all that kind of stuff, I think there's a real opportunity for you that this could be a multi-billion-dollar business. If it's a hundreds of billion-dollar opportunity market size, it's worth a shot, right? In that sense, because the risk reward makes sense, right? But if the risk is there, the same risk on most things you try in life, right? It's your effort and luck, there's a little bit of timing involved in that kind of stuff. But if the reward is like, in the stratosphere, it's worth a shot in my opinion. But if it's like, oh, I might get a job out of this, like, what are you doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And most people aren't starting restaurants to franchise like, 500 locations. They're just going to have the one restaurant. And I just think that they just don't understand business and, and how these things will pan out and like what the success rates are. I just don't think they've done enough research and diligence on it, unfortunately.
I agree with you, and I think that was the original intent of that Silicon Valley ethos. I just think that it has metastasized at this point into being a place that condones failure, right? And I don't like that.
And plus interest rates being where they're at and money being printed, they're just throwing money at any idea because it's like you said, it's just spray and pray kind of mentality.
Exactly. It's kind of like. Never mind.
No.
The network, owning the net, being able to own the network and ride that elevator to the fucking moon. Yes, everybody wants an effort, an attempt at that. You know what I mean? But I think what we're seeing is this move towards decentralization, where the networks, that have the biggest network effects in the future will be amongst more shared participants. I think that's like sort of something we see playing out. I'll wait to be proven right or wrong on that because I'm not right at the moment.
I want to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs for a second. I know you're aware of
Yeah.
it. For those that aren't aware of it, you should just go Google it, but I'll just kind of go real fast. At the bottom of the pyramid, there are the physiological needs that we all have, which is your air, your water, your food, your clothes, sleeping, reproduction, having kids, right? Safety and needs comes next. These, as you're going up this, and by the way, it's like a pyramid, right? So just Google it if you haven't heard of it, guys. So safety needs are your personal security, your employment, your resources, your health and property. Then there's love and belonging. It gets smaller and smaller on this, right? That's your friendship, your intimacy, your family, your sense of connection to people. And then there's like your esteem, self-esteem, right? Respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. And then at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. This is a desire to become the most that you can become, right? From my experience, spending a lot of time, hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours, it's really sad, on Clubhouse, and talking to maximalists, right? Bitcoin maximalists. It seems that most of them, in my opinion, have not reached self-actualization, because it seems that most of these people, what they're really trying to do is earn respect or status, recognition, right? They're still yearning for that. So they're at the esteem level, which is really high in the pyramid. Most people can't even get past their safety and needs. I mean, it's crazy, right? So they're there, but they got to go like one step higher, in my opinion. Very few people in life actually get to self-actualization. First of all, where do you think you're at in the pyramid? Where do you think most Bitcoiners are at in this pyramid? And how much of thinking have you had around this? And by the way, a lot of this has to do with your self-awareness, I think, because when you start,
I do a lot of thinking around this.
Oh, you do?
Actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I do a lot. So first of all, I think I'm at self-actualization, and I know that because I had a crisis when I reached that state. I'm wondering if you did too, like a little bit of just the what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do, because I honestly,
like,
we sold the company and like we had made a lot of money running it, but then when you sell, it's like a big windfall. Like I could never imagine it. So it was a big windfall, adding to our net worth. And yeah, you're like, well, why am I still working for the buyer? Like, it's like the money is compounding infinitely. I don't even need to do anything. Like, so now I was focusing on like, what's really important in my life. And that was my wife and kids and my mom and my dad and all that kind of stuff, My grandfather was still with me. So I spent a lot of time with him while he was still here. I got to, it was really great. I sold my company 6 years ago. He died 2 years ago. So for a good 4 years, I'd go pick him up, come over, watch football games together. It was great. But years before, I neglected all my relationships. All I did was I was laser focused on my business. And then after you get this bigger windfall, you're like, why do I need more? Of course I want more, and I'll do things to invest for more, but like, I don't need to spend most of my time away from my family anymore. And I got to that point, Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, just look at like, it's so great that you had that time with your grandfather. I mean, look at like the place you're in now. You're in a very nice house. You have a great bar behind you. You know
Which
what
I
I mean?
don't drink.
Wearing nice clothes. You got the good Shure microphone. You got it all, man. And the truth is, that house will fall into disrepair and somebody will bulldoze it. Your clothes will end up in the trash can. That Shure mic is going to be outdated soon. The only thing that we take with us in this life is our memories. So like the 4 years you got to pick up your grandfather, go to a meal with him, have conversations about whatever in his life. I mean, some of my best memories are sitting with my grandfather and him telling me World War II stories. And I just couldn't get enough of that. You know what I mean? Like I would just sit up for hours, and we would end up like, it'd be 1 a.m., and he was like, I'm 80 years old. I got to go to bed. Why are you keeping me up? But the truth was he loved telling the story. That's why we stayed up till 1 a.m. And like that shit was really
and you remember it.
But yeah, in terms of like self-actualization for Bitcoiners, I do think that you're correct, that people are just under self-actualization on the pyramid. And I think that when the Bitcoin price goes into the 6-figure range, 7-figure range, that's when you're going to see a lot of Bitcoiners reach the self-actualization stage. People that have, let's say, 10 Bitcoin or so are going to start reaching it when it's $1 million, because then you have 10 million bucks. You pretty much don't have to work again after that. And then you're going to sit around and look at yourself and say, okay, what do I do with myself now? And I think we're going to see a lot of interesting projects come out of that, because there are going to be these people who are the nouveau riche, who have, they're the same. The people that are rich now are still going to be rich because they have the ability to get in, but there are going to be new people sitting at the table of the wealthy elites. And some of these new people are they have a very different perspective on things. You know what I mean? They're not the same old moneyed elites
Millennials
that
and
have,
yeah, it's a totally
yeah,
different ballgame.
exactly. So I think it's gonna be the same thing as when Silicon Valley made a bunch of people like Elon billionaires,
Or
right?
Chamath, right? You saw the video with
I
Chamath.
think Elon,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
I think Elon took 170 million or 80 million from the PayPal deal, and he did it to then he started a fucking electric car company and a rocket company, right? So I think we're gonna see really cool stuff like that from Bitcoiners, because Elon is doing the rocket company because it's his self-actualization. He says, I want to get to Mars. I'm going to get humanity to Mars, and that's going to be the defining thing I did in my life, not start a fucking financial, middleman. Like, who cares about that?
Yeah.
I'm getting us to goddamn Mars, right? And so I think it's the same thing with Bitcoiners. And when you ask me, like, would I start a business in the future? Like, hell fucking yeah. If it gets us to Mars or it does something important, yes, I would definitely devote my time and my life to that goal, because that is a very worthy goal, and it gives you meaning and purpose in your life outside of your family, which is where most of your meaning and purpose should really come from, right? So yeah, I think for me, self-actualization has been about discipline, about becoming more disciplined in mind, in body, and in spirit. Essentially, not flying off the handle, like not giving into anger or ego or pride. Being more disciplined with my body, being healthy, going to the gym, trying to eat the right foods, being financially disciplined, and just, what I learned during the coronavirus thing was just like, I don't need that much in life. You know what I need in life? I need to hang out with my family. I need to go to the park with my daughters. I need good meals with good friends every once in a while. Occasionally I need to get drunk. Like, that's about it. That's about all I like to do,
Exactly.
I mean, really, it's pretty simple. Like, most of the stuff we like is pretty simple. So I think just enjoying your life and, figuring out what your purpose is, that's the top of the pyramid, right? Like, really enjoying every day too. And just being like, yeah, stuff is hard, but that's part of the journey, and learning to enjoy the suck, like sort of a stoic philosophy. Just like, take extreme ownership over everything in your life, and then enjoy the things that are really hard and difficult and may hurt you. Don't wish for them to be different, because that's your life, man. Everybody has to deal with the pain at some point.
HODL, let me ask you a question. How do you celebrate like big achievements? Like, for instance, like Bitcoin's going to hit $100,000. Are you going to celebrate when it hit certain numbers over the years? Like, you got it at $200, when it got like $10,000 or $50,000 recently. Like, did you and your wife pop bubbly or something? Like, what did you do to celebrate?
I popped this bottle of Dom P.
Nice.
At 20K. I drank that bottle of Dom P.
Cool.
It seems silly now that we're at 50K to have been celebrating 20K, but
it's a big accomplishment.
It was a long bear market. I had to eat a lot of shit for 3 years. I ate a lot of shit. Yeah. So I deserve that champagne.
And listen, it's going to happen again, right? So that's what these markets do in the cycle, in the 4-year halving.
I'm not a car guy. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't buy myself the Lambo or the Ferrari.
Yeah, like
or whatever.
CJ and Jason and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that kind of guy. Just because I just am not. I've never been that into cars for whatever reason. I just don't care. And I tend to treat material items like shit. Like, I treat my car bad. I'll bump into things. I don't care. Even if it's
like
a new
me
car,
and my boat. How many times have you had to get it repaired?
Yeah. No, seriously. Because for whatever reason, I just don't value material items, because it's like the thing I said to you earlier. I know they're all going to end up in the junkyard at some point. So who cares, right? Yeah. In terms of celebrating, I think going to Miami with the other Bitcoiners and being around, there's a big conference in Miami that a lot of us are going to, and that'll be a great moment to celebrate like how far we've come, and be like, feel the camaraderie, and have some drinks with everybody and do that kind of thing. But yeah, it is important to demarcate these moments in your life. I remember when I became a millionaire, I was sitting there smiling.
That's my next question.
At my phone, like,
do you recall when you became a millionaire? That's my next question.
I do. Some people have the story where they're like, I don't. It happened. I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
No, I was staring at my phone when it happened, and my buddy got a picture of me. My business partner actually got a picture of me staring at my phone like an idiot. And I look back on that picture, and
do you have that photo? Can you send me that photo?
I do.
I want to B-roll that into here when you say it. Yeah, do that.
I'll send it to you. So yeah, I'll right now you're seeing the exact moment I became a millionaire, and I remember like feeling like this was a big accomplishment. I just needed to. I think I went out to dinner that night with my wife and just really like took in the moment. That's kind of what I like to do. Is like, I go to a really nice dinner with my wife for these moments, and we kind of just talk about, because she's been there on the whole journey with me, and just talk about how it was and how we got there and all that kind of stuff. It is important to celebrate.
And dude, I don't like I met my wife when I met her. I sold my company. to Lou's company. You know Lou, right? So it sold to his company.
Yeah.
And then I thought, I'm going to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Like we were drinking a Kool-Aid and we had all this traffic, and then we get sued and we go bankrupt. And so I met Caitlin when I was there. She was the top salesperson. She was like our number one salesperson. The second year that I was there, she became the number one salesperson. And prior to that was this guy, Chris, that he left. And so, she was there on this like ride where it was going to do this, and then bang. So, and then she stayed with me. And then I started the next company, which Reed Hoffman and others invested in, right? I told you about. And then that failed. And then I was like, do you want to start a company with me? Like, I'm always going to keep doing that. Like, I'm never getting a job. So like a lot of girls would be like, this fucking guy's delusional. I'm out of here, right? Like, right? Nope. She stuck with me. She started a company with me. We built it. And so like, honestly, for me and her, and I bet you and your wife probably feel the same way when we go out to dinner, it's us against the world, because so many people behind our back probably talk shit. We could just feel the energy too with people, right? Like I don't know. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, how's your business?" And like, when they're really saying is, "Oh God, you're a loser." You know what I mean? Like, and then you have this outsized return success, and now it's like you did it together, like, and you guys basically did it together, right? Like me and Caitlin.
That's the core of a good marriage, I think. Is that feeling of it's us against the world.
Right.
Because we definitely have that feeling for sure. Like, this is like a circle to wagons, like protect our family and what our interest and fuck everyone else. You know what I mean? Like, listen, like, it's not to say like shut people out of your life. No, it's just to say like, we know what's right for us.
It's a strong bond.
And we're going to live in the manner that's right for us. So like, just always having those moments with my wife to celebrate how far we've come. And she's always the one who's telling me, like, she's always trying to get me to celebrate more. Like, she's like, can you believe it? Like, you did this or you did that. And I'm like, I could have done more. I mean, I'm always like,
Why
always
did I
in
hold
that
some of that
zone.
cash back? Or it's so stupid.
No, I know.
Thought I had more conviction than I did.
Met my wife. So I met my wife when she was 19 and I was 20. And I was just a cocky idiot at that point. You know what I mean? Like, I had a lot of big talk, but not a lot of action behind that talk, right? And she, luckily, to her credit, she bought into the vision, and I think saw things in me that even I didn't see in myself. And like, really, I mean, the advice I would give to young guys is like, your choice of who your wife is going to determine a lot of your success.
Buffett says that all the time. It's one of the biggest really choices you're going to make is who you marry. Yeah.
It's huge, man, because I saw it with my father, who married a woman with mental illness. I mean, it really hampered his life and his career, and was a real cross for him to bear for 30, 40 years. I mean, you don't want to put yourself, and he was like a good guy who wasn't going to divorce her. He stayed the whole time, to his credit, right? But it just was it really had and he could have sidestepped it. So this is probably partially where my feelings about don't fail, because sometimes the failure is so severe that you can't extract yourself from it. You know what I mean? Sometimes we think about failures, we can just move on, but no, sometimes the failure is so severe that it affects the rest of your life.
You can't get out of it. Yep.
And it is a true tragedy in that regard. So like, always avoiding it is the best thing possible. But yeah, man, my wife, the first year of our marriage, she made more money than me, which really pissed me off. It really pissed me off. I think she made $15,000 more than me, because it was the first year of my startup. I just had started.
You may have just lost $15,000 in the last 10 minutes.
I could have. Yeah,
might have gone up 15,000.
But yeah, I mean, I made 60 grand that year, the first year of my startup, and she made 75 grand that year. And I remember just being furious. And the next year, I think I made $250,000, and she was still stuck at 75. So I was
she's had a ceiling. She had a ceiling.
And people would hear that and be like, oh, you're bebeing competitive with your own wife or whatever. Like, no, listen, it was my own personal feeling about me as a man failing as a provider. It was something I used to motivate myself.
Sure.
And listen, she doesn't have to work, so she's not complaining. You know what I mean? Like, it worked out good for her. But just having those, it's important, man. I think it's important to like stick with the same person and have your ride or die. I see these rich guys who are in our position who think to themselves, I
don't need anybody.
All right, well, hey, I'm fucking rich, because women throw themselves at you the more money you get,
but what do you want?
Like,
that?
you get more.
Yeah.
No, I know, but you probably are smart and you avoid it, but you get more opportunities than guys.
I totally avoid it.
You know
I don't even go anywhere because of it, not that it's
exactly.
happening all the time. I'm not trying to purport that like people are throwing themselves at me, but like to the point of don't put yourself in a situation and whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I listen. I know you're a good dude. You don't do that kind of shit. No. Like, but I'm saying like, you know that the optionality is there. You know what I
If
mean?
I was
It's
single,
just
I
little
mean,
shits.
obviously, it's like it'd be
Yeah, of
easy,
course,
right?
of course,
I don't think
of
you're
course,
getting a level. The point is, you're not getting someone that you really want to be with anybody, But is it easy to go
yeah,
find someone to get laid or something when you have money? Of course, It's,
of course. It's much easier than if you don't, right?
that's right.
Like they're called gold diggers for a reason. You know
That's
what
exactly.
I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. And let me ask you. Speaking
Yeah.
of
So
gold digging, Hodl, what level of conviction do you have that at some point in your future you will become a billionaire?
I would say I have 100% conviction in that.
I
100%
love it.
conviction.
And that's your
Because
conviction. My next question is Bitcoin price future, right? And give me
yeah,
a 10,
Bitcoin
a
price.
20, and lifetime future price.
So I think by 2032, the Bitcoin price will be somewhere between $7 and $10 million, and then by 2040, we'll be in the 20 to $30 million range per
Wow.
coin, per coin.
Get your
So
get your
that's where I
sats,
think we're
bro.
at.
That's all I got to tell people.
I know.
Oh
Now,
shit.
in terms of purchasing power, because that there's a great monetary inflation going on, they're printing more money than ever, so the purchasing power will be different on 20 million
Right.
than it is today.
Yeah.
So I think, let's say we reach 30 million end state, that's like Bitcoin end game. I think that will have the equivalent of maybe $8 or $10 million in purchasing power today. So we should be at the place where one Bitcoin equals one mansion by, let's say, 2040. That's how I see this playing
Yeah.
out. So to me, it's not fucking things up. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, I feel like I've already put myself in a position to become a billionaire later,
Don't sell.
but I
Yeah.
don't want to. Yeah, if I fuck things up now, I'm not going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So if I get greedy, I try and trade, I flip it into Dogecoin, whatever,
It's
right?
not even an
There's all
option.
sorts of things. Yeah, there's all sorts of things you could do to get tricky. And so for me, I think to myself every day, how do I protect what I got, not fuck it up, stay the course, remain rational, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not give in to greed or to fear, but to walk the middle path as I head where I'm going. But yeah, I mean, I have 100% level of confidence because that's the way I've structured my life.
Yeah.
I've structured my life with that as my goal, and so I'm going to hit that goal, just without doubt.
Who do you feel today is the most influential person in Bitcoin? And I know as a Bitcoin maximalist, we don't want to idolize people. I totally get that. So it's not about idolizing, but like who's having the greatest impact right now is my point as an individual.
It's tough if I had to pick one person. So I'm going to pick somebody who's not inside the Bitcoin inner circle, and I'm going to say Gary Gensler, new SEC chief.
Yeah.
I think that he is in a position to really make this thing happen for Bitcoin over the course of the Biden administration. And honestly, I think he's the right individual for the job. He taught a course on Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like, he's very crypto friendly. I think he's going to create the regulatory sandbox that we need, the environment that we need to bring the real money in and get this thing, where it's going, and to keep American dominance and to maintain, American dominance going into the 21st century. Because I think that, I mean, we're already in the 21st century, but like, as this century plays out, right now we are behind in the Bitcoin race. And if this does become the internet of money, this is the internet of value. You want America to have pole position in that race and be able to exert its influence, continue to exert its influence, because the alternative is full on Chinese autocratic style communism, which I don't want. And, capitalism outcompeted communism in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
And I expect it to in the 21st also. We have this sort of like war going on between, it's a coordination problem that humanity's been fighting over for all these X number of years, right? And essentially you have top down in the East with, autocratic style communism, social credit scores and all that kind of thing. And then you have bottom up decentralization and libertarianism in the West, which is essentially like everybody's a sovereign individual. They have these inalienable rights, and, we're greater than the sum of our parts. And the thing about communism, in the last century, is that it couldn't account for unknown unknowns because it was top down. Like, I mean, let's not forget that the Cold War ended with Russia nuking itself, right? Because it couldn't see what it couldn't see, and it has black swans. Whereas a decentralized system has more inputs, more variables, and has higher level coordination with higher level fidelity information, and is able to more easily route around those black swans. So I think that we're going to see AI in the East, AI style communism. That's going to be the technology that powers the communism of the new century, versus, a Bitcoinized future in the West, which is going to be this bottom up libertarian grassroots, sort of controlled chaos that is, what the American experiment is famous for. We have always been a nation of decentralized libertarians, and I think decentralization is our greatest strength. Like, there's a famous quote from, I think it was the Russian military about the American military, which is just like, yeah, we don't know what they're doing because they don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? So we can't know what they're doing. It's like, that's how we've always coordinated as Americans. We aren't used to the top-down thing. We're used to the bottom-up individual thing. And so, yeah, I think Gary Gensler putting in the framework that
That's
makes
a thoughtful
America
answer,
succeed.
actually, because a lot of people would have said Michael Saylor, I think, because he's always in the news pumping it and talking about it. And you actually
I
just did it.
I like Michael.
I know you do. You just did a podcast. Yeah. You were a guest, about 5 or 6 of you guys on there. By the way, just take a step back. Did you actually believe, like, years ago that, like, somebody like you, just a normal guy, bought some Bitcoin and it's grown and you've built a Twitter following by talking about you buying Bitcoin and holding it, would be sitting on a podcast with Michael Saylor, who's on television all the time? It's like kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, it's weird, man. And what's funny is I view Michael Saylor as a noob because he's only been here for 1 year.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So actually, like, even though I have learned a lot from him, I still feel that I have a higher knowledge base.
Of course. He probably does too.
Yeah, but
that's why he did the podcast with you guys. Let's be honest, right?
He's rookie of the year. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's been phenomenal in the Bitcoin. But it is
awesome.
Weird.
Michael Saylor is rookie of the year. That's the quote of this podcast.
I was talking to my wife the other day about this, and she was like, can you believe that your friends that you used to hang out with are, working at, in the warehouse or at the bar or doing whatever,
hanging out with Michael Saylor.
And you're now hanging out with billionaires and stuff, and like you're like Jason and Jay and these guys you hang out with on Clubhouse, like super successful. You have a totally new group of people around you, all just off the strength of your conviction, speaking your truth and being convicted and speaking your mind. And I was like, yeah, it's fucking weird.
But dude,
man.
Think about it. What's the difference between the American HODL and Warren Buffett? You guys are doing the same thing, honestly.
Yeah.
You did the analysis, you did the research. Obviously, Warren hasn't done it on Bitcoin, but you did. And you're kind of the modern day version of Warren Buffett in digital currency.
And I'm a disciple of Warren's. I mean, I really do. I read The Intelligent Investor when I was 16, and I've studied Warren a lot. I've listened to a lot of his interviews. I've read his his newsletters that he puts out, or shareholder letters, I should say. And I mean, I think the guy was a genius in the century that he operated in, but he's not equipped to compete in this century.
It's shocking.
It's just the game has changed so radically. Mm-hmm. Analog to digital has been one of the most radical transformations.
He missed all digital. Yeah, he admits
in human history, and it's just starting. I mean, look around you. The world is still.
We're not going back to analog.
We haven't even. We're not going back. We've started to go full digital, and people think that because Facebook and Google and Twitter and all this, that we're at the end state of the digital revolution or something. It just started. It's not even inning one. You know what I mean? It's like they just sang the national anthem. Like, the game hasn't even fucking begun. Like, there is so much to happen in the next 80 years. I mean, it's going to be fucking insane.
The internet's
by the time we reach
really only 20,
the end of the century,
25 years old, roughly, I would say. I mean, it's older than that, but like the modern internet that we all use for social and communication and stuff, it's not that old.
Totally.
And this plays right into it. Yeah.
And dematerializing money is fucking massive. Yeah. Once you've dematerialized
this is the
money,
thing that people don't understand. So you can look at what Michael Saylor says, which is there's $400 trillion worth of assets, debt, equities, real estate, et cetera, bonds, all that stuff. But then when you look at money, I mean, how big is it when you look at like all of the M2 and everything? I mean, it's like when the dollar gets replaced over time, holy shit. I mean, that's a whole different way of thinking about it at some point, but going from the store value to the unit account,
the TAM for Bitcoin in today's day and age is probably something like $200 or $300 trillion. And going forward under the great, monetary inflation experiment that's happening, probably that's 500 trillion when all is said and done, maybe 600 trillion, right? Because the pie is going to continue to grow, and Bitcoin's acting like a black hole on the world's balance sheet, just sucking in capital from all global stores of value. I mean, it's sucking in from real estate, from bonds, from equities, from, everywhere. It's really from the art world. I mean, it's really truly crazy what's happening. And once you have a global currency that is truly digital and native to the internet, you have globalism at scale. You have real globalism minus slavery. So you have this sort of decentralized, bottom-up approach that America has been famous for that I talked about a few minutes ago, you now have this this sort of pure capitalism that is able to propagate around the entire world. And so, like, let's say, a kid in rural India figures out how to play this video game, the best in the world, and all the video game prizes are in sats, right? And he wins, 150 million sats, off of being the best video game player in the world or whatever. You know what I mean? Suddenly, he has not only lifted up himself and his rural village from poverty, but everybody. And you look at systems like Elon Musk's Starlink, right, which is creating rural internet for everybody, low latency rural internet for everybody in the world. And once that is fully propagated, and then you have a global money on top of that, the stack starts to get really crazy and the future starts to get really insane. And so what you're going to have is this battling out of that decentralized bottom-up system versus the top-down AI autocratic systems that the world's governments are trying to employ. So it's like the people versus the elites, or the analog elites.
Well, speaking of the elites, let's talk about some institutional money for a second, and then I'm going to wrap up in a couple of questions. Yeah. But if you think about it, we're moving into May, right? This move, by the way, the year is going quick. I feel like it goes faster every year, right? So we're going into May. We're heading into May now. And there's been so much talk in the early part of the year as the movement was moving up that this must be institutional money coming in, because you heard Ross Stevens and Michael Saylor talk about that. That was a great video, by the way. Everybody should watch that, where they talked about he has an order book of like $21 billion moving in. Anthony Scaramucci, who came on my show, was talking about how he raised his fund and there's money moving. I've been very disappointed in the size of his fund, not be getting more money in. And then I'm not hearing a lot of announcements around this institutional money moving in. Like, they usually move it in, then they tell you, right? So we saw PayPal, we saw Mass Mutual, we saw, but it's like it's fizzled out. Were we a little more, as Bitcoin optimists, maybe we're a little premature during this cycle, thinking that more would happen sooner, or is it just going to happen in the back half of the year, possibly, or over the next couple of years? What do you think?
More so, if from where I'm sitting today, late April, I would say that it's more likely to happen in the back half of the year, because these institutions don't act like individuals. They have, and Michael Saylor has talked about this, they have lag time, right? I mean, at the fastest for most of these corporations, if they're going at a sprint, it's 8 weeks, right? And so most of them are not able to go that fast. And, you have to have a champion inside the organization. That champion has to bring it through several committees and blah, 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 right? And so really you're looking at more like a 6-month lag time for most corporations, maybe longer. Maybe it's a multi-year lag time for some of these corporations that are slow to move on this kind of thing. And so, I think we are going to see some new announcements. There's a rumor that Walmart is going to announce in their early quarterly report in May. I think we might see something interesting out of Walmart. I think we might see something interesting out of some of the other Fortune 10 massive global corporations. And there are going to be more announcements throughout the end of the year. Are we going to be at a place by the end of the year where every S&P 500 company has it on their balance sheet? No, we won't be there. But maybe we're at a place where 10% of the S&P 500 has it on their balance sheet, which is fucking huge, right? And then, you have the people who think that there's going to be a multi-year bull market, and that we're, not only is 21 going to be bullish, 22, 23 are going to be bullish also. And then we might front run the next halving, and then you go all the way to 25. I mean, none of us know how this is going to play out. And this is why we hodl, right? Is because the reason I hodl is because I want to be in the market on every explosive up move. And the only way I can fully ensure that with a 100% guarantee is to hodl, right? Because if I try and trade in and out of this thing, I might not be there the next time it moves up in an explosive manner. I might be caught on the sideline and end up with less Bitcoin, right? So just hodl your way through. Exciting things are going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, we'll see. I think there is more institutional capital coming, but it may be overstated. We sometimes get super bullish and we think this is going to happen tomorrow. This is going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, and it's probably not, right? You're probably giving into greed when you feel those feelings. It's going to happen in a slow and steady manner, I think.
I got to meet your wife, which was really cool, on Clubhouse. It's great that you got her on.
Yeah.
She's a great person. And I think it was cool yesterday, she created Bitcoin Families as a group, I think it was called. And she wants to discuss topics like family values, relationships, homeschooling, estate planning, and more. And I think it's a really important thing, because when you come into money quickly, like all the Bitcoiners are, and tech guys do too, it's great to have a fraternity of people to help each other through these tough issues. So I just wanted to point that out. I think it's really great that she's thinking about those types of things. And I think we have a great network of people to be able to do that. And I think people should go check out your Mrs. HODL, right? Mrs. American HODL.
Mrs. American HODL.
Is it Mrs. AH, I think it is, right? Is that what her username is? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
But people that are Bitcoiners that are also on Clubhouse, you should go follow her. And I think she's really thoughtful about this kind of stuff. And I think she's going to be a good voice for the space on that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think there are a lot of people that are fed up with the current education system. So a lot of it is going to be like homeschooling focused or micro schooling, which is a new thing that's happening. I think
what's micro schooling?
One of the
I
big
haven't heard of that.
Micro schooling is when you get together with a community of other like-minded parents, and you all take like the money that you would spend on private school and you use it to hire teachers. But you have fully vetted these teachers, and the curriculum is something that you approve of, instead of your children getting taught like a bunch of nonsense. Like it's a pretty cool new idea that's just starting to form. And so I think micro schooling is really interesting. Homeschooling is really interesting. Charter schooling is really interesting. I think that we all agree that the education system is fundamentally broken. And, nowadays you have like critical race theory being taught in schools, which I am just full stop. Like, I think it's abhorrent. I think it's crazy to tell white children that they're born racist because of the color of their skin. And it permanently puts white children on this sort of pedestal above black children, which I also think is super racist. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, why don't we go back to the egalitarian? Like, listen, is it a utopian vision that we're all going to be in a post-racial society? Yeah, of course it is, man. But it's a utopian vision that's worth working towards. It's not. We're in this sort of zone where everybody wants to tear everything down just because it's not working perfectly. And guess what? Like,
but it has incrementally gotten better. And I try to have this discussion on Clubhouse with Lamar and some other guys, and I think they kind of agree with it. But the problem is that if you're slighted and you're in that camp, it's tough to acknowledge the incremental changes when there's still really shitty shit happening. You know what I mean?
So, I think the black community, for instance, would say that, just because a little bit of stuff is it's still really fucking bad, right? And so for you, like, if we focus on those incremental things, you'll be like, it's solved. We solved it. We can all go home, right? And really, it's not. And they're right about that, right? I think more so than anything, race is just being used to divide people. Yeah. I do not think that the majority of the country is racist.
It's like this on all these topics. Forget about just race. It's like everything is about divisiveness now. Yeah.
It's a division tactic. And back to the point of education is it's being taught in schools now in order to divide people. Yep. And I don't like that. Yep. I want my children to grow up in the multicultural, future that we all want. I don't want this sort of like weird woke segregation that's going on. It's very strange. I mean, like having different graduations for different colors of people and stuff like that. Like, it just can't help but make things worse if you're dividing people. Yeah. We all get along better when we're together, So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to homeschool your children and to focus on these new sort of alternate routes of education, I think.
HODL, I appreciate you coming on the show. You've been so generous with your time. We spent over 2 hours here. It's like me and CJ. Like we could just practice. We have so much practice talking to each other on Clubhouse. Thank you for spending time with me today. And I just wanted everybody to just know who you are that hasn't known. I mean, anybody in the Bitcoin community knows, but those outside should know who you are. I'm glad that we became friends. I really am. And I consider you a friend.
Yeah, me too, brother.
So thanks again.
Yeah. Dude, no, thanks for having me, man. I love the podcast. I think you're fucking killing it. So keep doing good. Hey, did you ever get Ray Lewis on?
No, dude, what's going on? Like, this guy hits me back, says, I'm going to come on. Everybody tags him and mentions, and he doesn't respond. I'm like, what the fuck, bro? I would love to have him on.
He's big time.
Yeah. I would like to have him on. To your point, he's like, I want to ask him about everything.
Yeah. No, seriously.
Maybe he's afraid of the questions.
Well, hey, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it.